All right, if you're watching this later, I will put the timestamp for when the show actually starts in the description. It'll probably be like 3 or 4 minutes from now. We're a few minutes early. I like to let people have a chance to get in. I'm also going to go post the link on Twitter. I have to go watch my own stream and then manually copy the link. It's probably a way to do it automatically, but I'm not really about that. Well, let's see how it looks on YouTube. It looks good. It looks good. Looks pretty good. All right. 3 concurrent viewers. I am famous. Okay, posting it on Twitter. Posting the new graphic. We got the new graphic. We got birds outside. We got the new graphic. We're set up. We have new lights. We have plans. Things are planned out. This is a new era of the studio. Assuming that I can find the new show. Oh, it's right there. Boom. Boom. Posted. Yeah, people are here. Nice. All right. How's it going, guys? How's it going? Feeling good. Feeling good about how everything is going so far. Got the new light situation. Yeah, everything's going good for me this week. I'm still digging myself out of the mountain of projects I got going on, but that's cool. It's better than having no projects. Definitely not complaining. How are you guys doing? I feel like what do Delicious Tacos say? We're spiritually past quarantine. Quarantine is spiritually over. Nice. You just watched part 1. That's so legit. Oh, yo, what's up, man? Nice. Usually I don't recognize people's names from Twitter, YouTube, email crossover, but I recognize that one. It's 7 right now. I just started, so let's just wait like a minute or two. Trying to be like more professional, so I would just press start right now, but we'll let a few people like jump in. I got books going on. I got some cool stuff we're gonna look at. I think this picture is gonna be dope. I was reading the Book of Numbers before, the second half, and then I'm thinking that everyone really liked the like audience request, not audience request, but like crowd sourcing symbols where I was like taking input from the audience. So I feel like we'll do that. Maybe like the last show of every month will be people telling me what to paint. If you weren't here last time, it was pretty, not last time, but maybe it was like 2 shows back or 3 maybe. It was pretty dope. People in the chat were like telling me symbols to use in the painting, and that was pretty awesome actually. So I think we'll do the last show of every month like that. Give people like, 2 more minutes and then we'll get it started. Someone asked me something. Where'd it go? Can you recommend any books about converts from Christianity to other religions? Why? But off the top of my head, not really. I mean, I'm 100% sure that exists, but it's not something that I've really checked out. But I'm sure there's a ton of stuff like that. I'm sure there's a bunch of like really popular like Barnes and Noble paperback like Leaving Christianity. Like I was an evangelical girl growing up and then I started believing in science or something. I'm totally sure that exists. Probably every religion and worldview has their own like set of books like that where it's like this person was in the other team and then they came to see the light. Yeah, I'm not really reading anything right now. I've just been working too much. I'm making my way through that Sacred History book still, but I was reading it like a month ago, so I haven't fully been immersed in the literature yet. Oh my God, I want to press play so badly. We're going to wait 1 more minute. Everything inside me is telling me to just push the play button, but we're going to wait 1 minute. What's going on with you guys? I literally can't believe other people are still just like in their freaking houses, man. Like I feel like it's just me, like I'm the only one in quarantine, and like outside the real world must just be like going on, but apparently people actually are quarantining. Oh, this is a great question for the pre-show. Okay, we'll talk about this and then we'll get it going. Yeah, Google mostly turns up clickbait articles. Yeah, I'm sure. I bet if you search like for particular stuff, like Christian becomes Muslim and stuff like that, there's a bunch of stuff like that on YouTube too. But like I said, it's not really something I seek out. Okay, pre-show question. Perfect. Weird question. What are your thoughts on looking into the Talmud and the non-canonical texts? That's a really good question, man. And it comes up all the time in my studies because whenever I look up anything, like if there's any Bible concept, and then I'm like, oh, cool, let's dig into like the, I almost don't even want to use the word esoterica because it's not like I'm looking for like hidden information, but let's say I just find some concept and I'm like, oh, let's just dig into the background of what the deal with this is. That stuff always comes up. It came up tonight when I was researching something for the show. It's a mix for the Talmud and what I would call like the rabbinical literature. That's like what I would call it. It's a mix. It depends on what I'm doing. Like if I'm looking up, a concept that is like non-biblical in nature and I'm researching it to see, how it works in terms of like archetypes and the subconscious and maybe even like, non-Christian systems and stuff, then yeah, I would definitely look at that. Like if I was looking up Lilith or things about like Lilith and certain demons and stuff like that, well, then, yeah, totally. Then it's definitely relevant 100%. But, like, for example, for tonight's show, I was looking up Balaam, this kind of, like, pagan source. He's not really, he's kind of pagan. We'll talk about it during the show. But this, like, sorcerer, kind of enchanter guy. And I was reading along in one of my books, and I got to, like, the section that was like, here's what the Talmud says about Balaam. And I was kind of just like, yeah, I don't really care for my picture. I don't really care for the show. Like, it doesn't really matter. So it really, really, really depends on the topic, honestly. Yeah, that's basically my question. For the most part, I see it as like an oral tradition from a non-Christian religion. So it's kind of the same thing for me. Like, yeah, like when I was looking up Balaam, I got to a section in one of my books that was like, here's what Muslim culture in the Quran says about Balaam. And I kind of skimmed it, but ultimately I was like, yeah. I mean, I don't want to say I don't care. Like I care in like a pedantic and like academic sense, but it's in like a separate folder. It's in like a separate folder for me. Put it that way. Okay. It's 7:05. Oh, that's definitely enough time. All right. Where is the button? Ooh, I think it's intro too. All right. Oh, word. Thanks, man. Smiley emoji. Yeah, I wish I could design special emojis. I think you can do that on Twitch, but not here. All right. We've waited too long. Let's do it. Ready, set. Wow. Well, I really played myself there. It didn't go. Damn, I have the fucking sick intro. Oh, it's new intro. Boom. All right. How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the show. I'm very happy to be here, actually. All day I look forward to doing this. So yeah, honestly, let's just jump in case you haven't seen any of these before, maybe it's your first time here. Kind of tried to step up like the direction and, keeping it moving towards the perfection, platonic ideal of the show. So I kind of just want to jump in, and I used to kind of like maybe ramble on a little bit in the beginning, if I could put it that way, but I think we're going to kind of flip that a little bit. So I think we'll just jump right in, and then we can like ramble on and like talk about random stuff later. Let's do it that way. One thing that I did want to do is, since I have so many cool books here, I thought sometimes if there was like a relevant book, maybe I would just pull it out and show you guys, or an irrelevant book. But this one's pretty cool. I picked this up recently. Dictionary of Bible Types. I don't think I showed this on the stream last week. In case I didn't. It's really cool. It's also really relevant to what we're going to be doing. It's been helping me a lot out in my studies and stuff like that. This is basically like another symbol dictionary. I have a bunch of like symbol dictionaries here. In case you haven't seen that before, it's like an encyclopedia, but you can look up symbols in it instead of literal just words. And this one's really cool because it is just a dictionary of Bible types. I totally forget if I covered this last time, but just in case I didn't, it's worth going over again. I'm not going to go over like what types are. It's basically like things in the Old Testament that prefigure the New Testament. But it's pretty awesome because in here this guy's gone through and has basically everything, and he's even broken it up. You can see, maybe you can't, but I'm not going to zoom in too much on it. Like for city, it has an A, B, or C. A is like, this is definitely a type for real, like everyone recognizes it. B is like, yeah, baby, and then he has a tier, which is C, which is like, yeah, I'm kind of just winging it right now, which I really appreciate as someone who like, has their own like crazy ideas. Also, this is one of the only symbol dictionaries and encyclopedias that I have where you can look things up in verse. What I mean by that is I have all these symbol dictionaries, right? But they only work one direction. So you can only go to like cardinal and then see what a cardinal represents, or like scales and it'll say justice. That's actually a really good example. But you can't open the book and go to justice and then get a list of symbols that represent justice. Someone needs to make that book. I can't find it. That really should exist, and it's maddening because then you pick up the book and you're like, oh, let's look up symbols like for justice, but you can't do that. You have to go to like the specific ones you want. Almost makes it useless sometimes. But here, you can do that. If you look up New Testament things like here's church, it'll in verse give you the typological symbols for church, or what's before church here? Oh, Jesus. So yeah, that's like the most of them, right? Anyway, just thought I'd plug it in case anyone's trying to expand their library. It is pretty cool. Otherwise, though, we are continuing along our Book of Numbers theme. It's Book of Numbers Part 2, but like I said on Twitter, if you didn't see Book of Numbers Part 1, that's okay. It doesn't really matter, honestly, because we're just cutting to a part of the Bible. It's not like we built up through the whole Bible to the Book of Numbers, so you're just dropping in. Since it is a lesser-known book of the Bible, though, I will just kind of like reiterate what I was thinking before while I throw down my little rectangle here. So whenever I'm talking about any theology stuff, I have to just remind people with the caveat, like obviously I'm not a priest or a theologian, I'm just this random painter guy, but I do enjoy talking about such things. But I put that caveat there so I can't be accused of misleading people or anything. I'm just like some guy. Just think of it as like some guy talking. I'm obviously not an expert. Not that anyone would think that, but I kind of just have to give the caveat. Anyway, so yeah, when I posted about it last time, it was funny because a lot of people were like, oh yeah, Book of Numbers, like, yeah, I don't know, I think I read that, but maybe it was like kind of boring, I don't really remember. Or a lot of people just haven't checked it out. But it is actually one of the cooler books of the Bible, in my opinion, and it has a lot of really cool symbols and themes going on, and that's why I thought we'd hit it at the start of Season 2, which you are tuned into right now. For me, the way it figures into the whole story of the Old Testament is just before the Book of Numbers, you have Leviticus, where it's basically just like the rules. Here's how people can interact with this like perfect, holy God, people imperfect, fallen, God, holy and perfect. How can they exist together? The book of Leviticus says what to do, like don't eat bats or moles or weird animals. God doesn't like that, I guess. And then we get to the book of Numbers, which is really cool for me because it's like, all right, now you guys know how to interact with this like perfect divine being and how to live in the presence of this like pure holiness. But how does it play out? That's the book of Numbers. So what we covered last time was the tabernacle. God doesn't figure out, but they established a situation wherein God can live among the people in the tabernacle, and they carry the tabernacle around, and they're going through the desert. The people aren't really very grateful about it, so God forces them to wander through the wilderness. That's the wilderness generation most people know about, where they don't get to go to the promised land. They wander around for 40 years, and then they die, and their kids get to go. It's a whole long thing. But the real theme of it, I guess this is what I wanted to talk about before we get started. The whole real theme of it, for me, that I think is kind of also relevant in a weird way to, I guess you could say, the idea sphere that we all inhabit. I was thinking about this before, and I was thinking about why I was like so drawn to this like book in particular. And it's really interesting because I feel like all the symbols, like what we're going to look at and talk about right now, what we talked about last week, but also what I have lined up here, and basically the whole book, I feel like it's almost like the main like symbol for it, I guess, would be like a double-edged sword, where the whole book for me is kind of about that God like extends his hand and he's like, hey, like, yeah, totally, like, want to shake my hand and do this? But then the people have the free will. They have the choice to say, yeah, totally, or no, I don't want to. And he kind of respects their decision if they say no and turn away from him, and then there are consequences for it. So in a way, I feel like all the symbols that we're going to deal with here, or, dealt with last time, but also that we're going to deal with here, have to relate to that kind of paradox. And I was just, kind of thinking about it as I was like getting set up and everything. And in a way, I feel like it's oddly relevant to like our whole sphere that we inhabit, like idea-wise, because, we have a lot of like, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say it's a big tent. It's like the lame way of saying it. It's like, yeah, it cut out, but I think I'm back. Is it back now? Let's see. Is it back now? I'm officially gonna upgrade my internet after this stream, because it happened last week too. I think it's fine now. It's funny because I use my internet all day and it's totally fine. I think we're good. Are we good? There's a delay. It's back. Should be good. Alright, I'll officially fix the internet for next stream. So now I fixed the lights and everything in the paint, and now the internet's weird. But it's cool. I think it's fine. That happened one time last week, but I think it's cool. Alright, I'm just going to keep going on what I was saying, and then we'll jump into this. Because I was going to make a really dope point. I think we're good. I'm just going to keep going. We'll be good. Alright, so what I was saying was, keep it brief in a nutshell so we can get started. It's basically all about people kind of having the option to like turn away from God and like the consequences of that. And all I was going to say was that, I feel like we have this whole big like sphere of people that some people are, really into like politics, and maybe some people really aren't into that and are into religion or cultural analysis or X, Y, and Z. And I think the one thing that unites all the people in kind of the general large weird sphere that we inhabit is just feeling like there's something up with the way society is going, and like there's something kind of wrong with it, maybe even in the most like vague sense, like the direction it's going. And in a weird way, I feel like eventually, as you butt your head up against that wall so long, you kind of have to accept that like double-edged sword that I was just describing, where like, yeah, like sometimes a large group of people like chooses to turn their back on something, whether it's, you can make it like theological and say it's God or some like higher principle or whatever. And sometimes you're just on the ground watching it play out. And I just feel like in a weird way, that must be something that like everyone who hangs around in the weirdo idea sphere can relate to. And I feel like accepting that, or how you like come to terms with that and how you want to like wrestle with that, is kind of the arc of everyone's story that's on the ground, like in our weird little hangout sphere. That's basically all I wanted to say. And I think that's why I was like so drawn to this book. So cool. Let's jump in. And we're actually going to jump in right off the bat right now with something that I've never painted before. I think it'll go pretty well. I'm going to start over here. So I'm breaking these out. Boom. Watercolor pencils. Classic from season 1. In case you are unfamiliar with them, they are pencils where the inside is water soluble. So once I hit these with water, it'll become watercolor. But it goes on as a pencil, so it's really easy to control and stuff. And the first thing I'm going to hit actually is a donkey. And I haven't painted a donkey before. I'm pretty confident because I've drawn a lot of animals, so I think it'll be fine. So what I want to do is I'm going to lay it out. I'm going to kind of talk about how a donkey like plays into the story. Then I got this part of this book I want to read, and we'll just kind of like build up. What I'm thinking for this, and kind of the same thing as last week, is that I want to make kind of a just symbolic I guess the word I've started using is like a symbolic like tapestry, where the symbols from the story can kind of just like fit in with each other and make themselves into this like larger composition. I'm not really so into like illustrating like a moment from the story yet. Maybe we'll get into that later, but I think it's cool to just like siphon out like little parts of the book that are the symbolic parts, and then, you know, work them into like a composition together. So that's what we're going to do right now. And I'm drawing this donkey, and I feel like the pressure is on right now, but it'll be cool. And even if it comes out whack, I can just kind of like take the gray and just like make it bleed out into the background. Also, this pencil's not very sharp. I don't want it to be too sharp because then it's going to go on like super dark. So I really just want this to be like a super light thing for me to paint over. I actually will make it a little bit darker because I don't think you can really see it on the stream because it's so light. It's cool with me. And yeah, we're starting out with a donkey because we're going to go out of order. Last time we totally went in order. Wow, it's really light. That's pretty good for me actually, but I'll make it a little darker so you can see. I'm just going to quickly like sketch this out, just like the shell of it. So we're going to start out with this guy Balaam, and obviously everyone knows about me that I'm really into any kind of weird magical stuff. Obviously, it's kind of the vibe, right? Unless it's your first day here. And this guy Balaam plays into the Numbers story because when they get to Moab, the Israelites that are traveling through, I actually learned today that Moab, the place they were going, it was originally called Lot, and then it has another name that starts with Lot. I forget what it is, like Lotan. It was called Lotan because the Moabites were descended from Lot. It's kind of a cool little obsessive detail there. But yeah, so they get to Moab, and the king there asks this like sorcerer Balaam, I'm going to have his leg up a little bit. It's kind of a risky move because it might not, I didn't sketch that out, but I think it'll be cool. They also have kind of like a fat belly. I feel like the goal here is to make it not look like a horse. Otherwise, I think we'll be good. See, I give you guys the real deal. I could have started out with something that I was 100% like beefed up to do, but I think it'll be cool. So anyway, the king of Moab gets this sorcerer, this pagan like enchanter, basically. We'll talk about him more later. This guy Balaam, to come and curse the Israelites. And it's pretty interesting because I'm going to give him kind of a long tail too. His head's a little bit too big, but I kind of like it actually. We're just going to roll with it. Cool. It's actually perfect. And they have these weird ears. They're kind of like big like ears that come out like that. That's perfect actually. Nice. Okay, and I'm going to throw down some gray and we're going to get this going. If you've seen me mix grays on the stream before, you can actually mix opposite colors that are opposite on the color wheel, and it'll make gray. So red and green, for example, are opposites on the color wheel. They'll kind of like annihilate each other and make gray. Orange and blue will make gray also. I kind of want to just make my own gray. I could mix it with black and white, but the thing is, since there's no color in there like fighting each other, it kind of just comes out really dead. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to mix one up right now. It's a little bit risky to do live because I could mess it up, but I think it's cool. And let's just see. I don't actually know if this purple will let me make a gray with the yellow, but let's just try it. And if it doesn't work, then I'll make a gray and just drop some like yellow ochre into it. So let's see. I'm going to take this purple. This is dioxazine violet. This is actually the coldest color I have in the whole palette. So temperature is like another way to gauge colors that people don't normally talk about. So it's the coolest color in the whole palette. And I'm just going to mix it with a little bit of this yellow and then white. And let's see how close we can get to the gray that I'm thinking of. I feel like I can picture a donkey in my mind, that like exact gray color, if you know what I'm talking about, and I just want to get there. So anyway, it's kind of interesting for a few reasons because they seek out this like enchanter sorcerer guy, and they get to his spot, and they're like, hey, you know, the king wants you to come and like curse the Israelites, basically. And he says, I don't know, I got to think about it. You guys sleep here for the night, and I'll see, you know, if I have any dreams or if God talks to me tonight, and then we can talk in the morning. And he does. He has this dream. It's not really a dream. It's more like God just like talks to him that night. But that alone I thought was really interesting because I was like, here's this guy. He's not even part of, you know, the Israelites. And God, he's like this, like I said, like a pagan, like enchanter, sorcerer guy. And God is talking to him, which I thought was kind of interesting in a way. Throughout the whole Bible, I'm really fascinated by the idea of like, oh, dude, I think this is going to make that warm gray I was thinking of. This is awesome. I'm kind of fascinated by the idea of like where like how God can like do anything, but like paradoxically he's not constrained, but like there are certain like conditions he kind of puts on things. It's a little yellow. I actually put in a lot of yellow because I wanted it to not be too purple, but it's too yellow. Let's see what we can do here. Cool. This is a pretty good gray color. Actually, that's really legit. I might just go with this. Yeah, let's go with it. Let's just roll with it. Keep it moving. But I need way more. So I'm going to grab some more white. I'm going to throw in some more white. So yeah, I thought that was interesting that God uses this like non-Israelite enchanter character and like talks to him directly. And it's actually even more interesting because later on in the story, he's taken to this place. So I was really obsessively like getting the details about like, you know, where they went. And like, it doesn't even really say he's like pagan, but you know, he's part of the Moabites. He's not an Israelite. So the king eventually takes him to this place that's called the Pillar of Baal. So it's like a spot, I suppose, where they're doing sacrifices to this other god. And it's kind of interesting because God talks to him there also. So it's kind of an interesting detail, like God using this person that's not even part of, you know, the right like theological system as part of his like master plan, you could say. And I just thought that was kind of cool. Anyway, I think we're going to go with this. This looks like a pretty good donkey color, and if it's not, then we can just... I just want a little black. I'm actually going to cheat. I'm going to cheat and throw in a little black. Boom. So anyway, we got this donkey going on because the people come, Balaam says, nah, I'm not going to do that. Sorry, God said, no, I can't do that. They leave and go back to the king, and the king's like, go ask him again and basically like give him more money or give him more stuff, basically. So the guys go back, and Balaam says, oh, I got to like ask God again. I'm worried this is going to like become purple, but I think we'll be good. Let's go with this and see how it goes. The color is also going to dry darker, so in my mind I have to anticipate like how exactly that's going to look. That's good though. And let's go with this guy. We don't want it to make it like too fat, but we don't want it to be too thin either. So then they go back. Balaam has another dream, or God speaks to him again. And God basically says, yeah, I mean, you can do it if you really want to. He says, if you really want to do it, but you can only tell them what I tell you to say. You can only say the things that I say, basically. So he goes, and it's also interesting, you know, I'm just going to kind of tell you the things I didn't really understand from the story. It's kind of the nice thing about not being like an academic theologian. I don't have to pretend to understand everything. So he goes, but then God's like super mad that he went. So I thought that was interesting too. I figured there must be something I didn't really get there because God says, yeah, go if you want. And then Balaam's like, all right, let's go. We're going to go. But then, perfect. It's like the perfect like light gray. But then right away, God is pissed that he went and punishes him or tries to punish him. That's how the donkey figures in. So I thought that was interesting. I thought that maybe there was something I missed. That's kind of why I started asking about translations on the Twitter, because I was like, you know, there must be something here that I'm not getting. Maybe he like wasn't supposed to go, but anyway, so he's on the way there and he's riding this donkey, the donkey I'm painting right now. We're probably going to put like a cloth over the donkey's back because it's like meant to be ridden. So that'll be cool too. But he's riding this donkey there, and as they're going along, this angel comes. And what's interesting is the donkey can see the angel, but Balaam can't see the angel. So they get to the middle of the road, and the donkey can see the angel, and the angel is like wielding this flaming sword, right? And obviously being like super intimidating. So the donkey won't go any further. And then Balaam's like, what's going on? And he strikes the donkey to get it to keep going. And it's really interesting talking while I'm painting. I just want to make sure I don't mess this up. And the donkey goes off to the side into this field, and he strikes it again. And the angel gives the donkey the ability to talk. And then the donkey says something like, why are you hitting me? He says, like, why are you hitting me? Haven't I been, like, such a good donkey for you, like, your whole life, and now you're whapping me with this, like, shepherd's rod? And the other weird thing is that Balaam just responds. He just responds to the donkey. He doesn't say, wow, my donkey's talking for the first time in, like, the 12 years I've owned it or something. He just is like, oh, my donkey's talking. And he says something like, yeah, you've been a good donkey, but you're not even, you're going off the road. Like, what's going on? And then Balaam is given the ability to see the angel after that. And that's when he can see the angel and converse with the angel. So I thought that was really interesting, the idea that like this animal could just like see the angel right off the bat, but Balaam couldn't. The theme of like people having like hard hearts or like not being able to see things because of like the state of their hearts is kind of a big thing in the Old Testament. I think the most like notable, like obvious example is, to me, is Pharaoh in Egypt, who both hardens his own heart and has his heart hardened. It's like literally a tongue twister. By God when it comes time to have the plagues happen, and he's debating if he should let them go or not. So his heart is hardened, right? And it's like this state where like you can't really, I guess you could say, like evaluate things well. You can't really see clearly. So in this one commentary I checked out, it was saying that that's what happened to Balaam. His heart was like so hard that he couldn't see the angel. But the donkey, by virtue of its own like naivete, basically could see the angel right off the bat. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I grabbed black. We're going to talk about the symbolism of the donkey in a second. I'm just going to pull it up in this book. But I also think that's kind of a cool one because for us, the donkey is like kind of like a stupid animal. Right? I mean, that's what I think of when I think of a donkey. I think of them as like just being dumb, I guess, maybe because of like cartoon shows. This is really like low contrast right now. I'm going to kick up the contrast in a minute and make it like doper. If it's anyone's first time here, they're like, oh, cool, a gray blob. But I'm gonna keep it moving in just a second. But yeah, I mostly think of donkeys as like dumb, but like from what I understand, like back in the day, they were kind of like the choice animal to have around, and they're like super dependable. But they do have kind of like a lowly, I guess like a humble, is that a good word for it? A humble, make this a little darker, just because I want to paint the hooves in. All these colors just so I wouldn't have to put down black, but that's what I really want. Honestly, the first time that I dug into Christian symbolism, like way back in the day, and I heard about Jesus riding a donkey, I actually thought it was a joke. I read this James Tate poem that was about Jesus riding a donkey, and I actually thought it was like just a joke. I guess that is basically the perfect emblem of a donkey, and maybe why he chose it. All right, so I'm going to throw in the hooves. We'll let this dry. I'll pull up this little part of the book. But yeah, I just thought it was so weird that Balaam was riding a donkey also. It could just be like purely utilitarian. And like I'm here thousands of years later looking into it being like, why a donkey? And if you went back, they'd be like, yeah, that's just what you ride around, right? Like in 5,000 years, someone would be like, why a car? It must mean something. And let's just give it this dark color. We spent too much time on this already. Boom. Boom. I also am really interested in the theme of like magic in the Bible, obviously. Like, I guess you could say sorcery and things like that. Not that I'm about that. Let's just give him kind of like, yeah, it's not dark enough, but it's fine. So I thought it was interesting that, I'm always looking at like kind of like the little details and like picking things up. That Balaam didn't think it was significant that his donkey was talking, right? Which clearly means that somewhere in his like enchanting or sorcery, like the idea of interacting with an animal that could talk like didn't really mean anything to him. It's just a little interesting note there. Okay, cool. This is perfect. I'm going to outline this. I thought it would be like a little bit more high contrast. High contrast is what I'm pumping for anyone doing their own painting. It's pretty good, actually. When I outline it, it'll look more dope. That's just a little get us starting right over here. But I am going to pull up really quick. So I got this book right over here. This is a great book. Probably going to use this on like every other show for like the rest of the time. Book of Symbols, Reflections on Archetypal Images. Really recommend it. And I happen to have a little bookmark right here. Boom! Open to the donkey. Got this really funny picture here by this guy named Bill Taylor. He's kind of like a folk artist, I guess, which means he doesn't really have much training in a good way, I guess. This is pretty funny. Got Caravaggio. Holy Family riding the donkey up here. This is Caravaggio, right? No, it's not. It's someone else. Whatever, we'll go into it later. Anyway, so I wanted to just check out one or two things it says over here. I read this before, so I wouldn't end up going through the whole page on screen, but I just want to read right here in this last paragraph. This kind of goes over what I was just saying, but it's kind of a cool note. Sometimes called an ass, and in Spanish-speaking countries a burro, the donkey is a member of the horse family. Mules are hybrids of donkeys and horses. The donkey has always been considered the poor relation of the elegant, long-legged horse. It's kind of like a bootleg horse. I think that's actually a really good summation of what the donkey represents. So much so that it is an emblem of the humble. Yet there is something admirable and handsome in its sturdy, compact body and fine, long ears. It has greater intelligence than the horse. I wonder if that's actually true or if it's just like a folk thing. It is more sure-footed and has the capacity to withstand the most arid landscapes and unerringly negotiate rocky, precarious terrain. There is a whole other aspect to the donkey, of course. Wild asses are not as social as horses, and adult males tend to live alone within large territories that they mark with big piles of dung, obtaining exclusive mating rights to receptive females who wander through them. It's kind of like Twitter, I guess. The long ears and the big teeth revealed in the lusty, raucous braying of the males when fighting over females or calling to each other over long distances have been caricatured as the randy, comical, smart ass. Long ago associated with Dionysian stuff and revelry and orgy, medieval follies, Saturnalia, Roman stuff. This last paragraph I wanted to hit also. So yeah, basically it's like it's like a non-elegant cousin to the horse. I feel like that really hits its like symbolic framework perfectly. Over here, thought this was cool. Alchemy portrayed the wild ass, sometimes in the form of a unicorn, as a chthonic, that means like underground, like underworldy, in case you don't know that, and redemptive spirit. In the fairy tale The Donkey, a prince musician is born in the body of an ass, and in Donkey Skin, a princess fleeing her incestuous father cloaks herself in the skin of a magical donkey and works as a kitchen maid. Each is redeemed by enduring with grace and diligence being under the donkey skin, because they embrace the unseemly shadow of their natures. Their royal splendor is ultimately restored. So that's kind of interesting. Like, I don't know, there must be something about like Jesus riding a donkey. It's like this humble, weird creature, like what it's saying here. And then it mentions Balaam. In the famous biblical legend in the book of Numbers, legend, although it really happened, obviously, Balaam whips his ass for stopping abruptly, but the ass is stopped because its anchored instinct and inherent humility allow it to perceive an angel blocking its path, a divine presence invisible to its arrogant human rider. Interesting. Since I've never really painted up a donkey before, I thought we would just go through that really quick. And let's move a little more swiftly because I just want to keep it going. I'm just going to quickly outline this thing, make it look a little bit more badass, honestly, in burnt umber, and then we'll move to something else. Keep it going. I'm just going to outline it in brown, just like a dark brown. And I guess I should switch to a little bit of a thinner weapon over here really quick. Cool. And it's interesting painting an animal I've never painted before on the stream live, honestly. I feel like it's interesting because, again, part of the stream, we're focusing a lot on like symbolism and archetypal stuff and things like that. I'm just going to go for it with this outline. We'll see how it goes. Symbolism and, all that stuff, but it's also about like painting and like the creative process. And I've been talking a lot about like the medieval conception of like painting animals, how you would get like an artist who maybe was painting an animal they never saw before in real life, and how it gives it this really weird feeling to the painting. Like you can see if you look up like medieval paintings of elephants and things like that, it's like you can see that the person has never seen an elephant before in their life, obviously. And I really like that. It's like the pure like idea of the animal. So I think when I was painting this, I was probably a little worried about it not looking like a donkey, but I could have pushed the envelope a little bit. If I paint the donkey again later, we'll make that happen. So I'm just going to outline it. Boom. It's kind of like caught in the middle, honestly. It's like caught in the middle of like being like a naive medieval drawing, but then also being like an actual trying to look real painting, but we're just going to roll with it. And when I throw down some darker colors on the donkey, it'll look tighter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Balaam rising up out of this. I'm not going to paint him riding it just because it's not as badass as what I'm imagining right now. And I also have him kind of kneeling down because I'm going to put a flaming sword in front of him. So I'm not going to paint the full-on angel. Trying to like play to like the strengths of like what will make like a very like enigmatic kind of like mysterious looking picture. So I'm going to put the flaming sword in front of him, and you can see he's kind of like kneeling down before this like flaming sword. That happens in the story, by the way. Finally, when he like hits the donkey eventually like kneels down, and that's when he starts talking. Cool. And I'm going to get this going. And yeah, I'm still mastering now that I have like particular things I want to talk about, like keeping up with the chat while also not being totally derailed. I do want to figure that out because I like talking to you guys. Not only because I'm cooped up in my house, but because obviously the people that hang out here are the coolest. Duh. Peter M. said something interesting. You won't see anyone in the Bible described as pagan, just the nations or Gentiles, because pagan is a later term. It refers to rural countryside dwellers, pagan. Yeah, that's true, actually. That's true, obviously. Yeah, I guess what I mean is like, yeah, true. I guess it wouldn't say like this guy was straight up pagan. But I was looking to see if he was like a devotee of like another god. I thought it was interesting. I just kind of like painted him as like a God-based person, if that makes sense. Maybe he got it right. Sometimes they get it right. And I'm just going to go for it and kind of like mix this umber, this dark brown in. And I'm just going to like paint in some like darker patches on the donkey. Just like make it a little bit more exciting to look at. It kind of is like gray blob status right now. A little chaos going in there. And then what I'm thinking for Balaam is that I don't actually really want to render him as like a particular person with like particular characteristics. Yeah, it looks dope. Looks dope. It's kind of exactly what I wanted. Just get a little bit lighter. Yeah. Cool. It'll fit in with the rest of the picture. Perfect. Yeah, it's pretty dope. And yeah, I think I'm not going to paint Balaam in as like a particular person. I think I might just render him as like this huge shadowy figure. Okay, I like how that looks for right now. We'll probably come back and like put some more details on it, but for right now, that's definitely fine. And what I'm thinking is I just want this dark, I want it to be a very menacing, but like enigmatic, dark figure of Balaam. And what I want it to be is I want it to come up like this. I want the head up here, and then it just to be coming down his back. So it's almost just like the head is going to be on this big, like, formless body, kind of like a profile. I used to use this pictorial composition a lot, where like you have something at the bottom that cuts off like the figure, maybe like 3/4 of the way down. I think it gives it like a really good feeling. Kind of like it makes it very pictorial instead of like a real space that you're looking at. So let's just do that right now. And honestly, I think I'm just going to use black. Let's just get the black going. I'm going to flip over the palette so I can use the other side without getting my hands in paint. Boom. And I'm just going to go for it. I also want to give him a beard, and I kind of want to drive up this like weird desert enchanter feeling that he has in my mind. This guy, you know, the king god to like try and curse the Israelites. It's funny because I was like, well, I want to paint him with an animal skull on top of his head. Yeah, he's going to be pretty tall. Yeah. I kind of wanted him to have like an animal skull to drive home, like I said, this weird kind of like magical figure in like the shadowy, you know, desert, right? And I was like, well, you know, I don't know, he's a biblical figure. Like, can I just paint him however I want? Like, throw like an animal skull on his head? And I looked up paintings of him, and they all have him in like Renaissance clothes, or like even like Arab clothes, or like turbans and all this like random stuff. So I was like, all right, I can do whatever I want for this one. If it was a saint or something, you know, I'd have to play within the rules, but this guy's not really looked at as like the best dude. I guess we'll talk about that as I'm painting him. And I'm going to try and give myself a little leeway. I might paint in the head even a little bit bigger than I think it should be, just because if the head is like too big and then the figure gets cut off before I thought it would, that's fine. Doesn't really matter. But if I make the head too small and tall and then the body has to come down longer, then it's going to be bad. Then it's going to look kind of weird. So I can play it off easier if I make the head too big. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to paint in the nose, and then I'm going to basically just put like a generic animal skull down on his back. Should I change to a smaller brush? No. Let's just roll with it. We're just going to roll with it. All right. So let's see. I feel like if I make it like that big, that would probably be perfect, actually. So I'm just going to paint in the nose right there. Have it coming back in. And then I don't know if I'm going to make his whole face dark or if I'm going to have the chin like poking out of the darkness. But I'll leave myself both options. So we got the head coming down to the chin. It's pretty good shape, actually. And then, like I said, I'm going to have him wearing this animal skull. So I'm going to... It'll be coming off his head. I guess it'll be a ram skull. Perfect. And the ram skulls, usually they have like... Their nose is kind of weird. It kind of like comes off. Yeah. And then you get the eye part, which I am going to paint in right now. Ooh, I can leave the eye hole on the ram skull open and put a color in there if I wanted to. I'm going to do that. But I got to make it look like a skull, so I'm going to put in that kind of nose piece that's always missing. And then sometimes you get these like scraggly kind of like cracks where the plates of the skull have formed together. In case people don't know, that's what those lines are that you see on the skulls. It's from when the skull formed as like a fetal animal, and then you have them too in those places where the plates of the skull fuse together. And I'm going to give it some ram's horns. I feel like it has a very like deserty feel when you have the ram's horns like curling back. So that's what we're going to do. I don't want to put them too three-dimensional. I could have it like twisting out at the viewer, but I feel like I'm going for flat. I'm going for like very flat, somewhere between like 400 AD and like 1100 AD. Flat. There we go. Perfect. And with the back horn, I'm really torn because I could have it kick up and that would look better, but then it might not read as like another horn, and sometimes then the viewer is looking at it and being like, why are these horns different? So I'm going to have it be right in the middle. It's still curling back, but not in the same way. That is perfect. And what I'm thinking is probably going to get a snake going over here. We'll talk about that later. And if I put stripes on the snake, I'll put stripes on the horns, and then they'll match. That would be sick. Cool character, sort of similar to Balaam in that he's a priest with no clear religion as Melchizedek in the book of Genesis. Yo. Yeah, I should check that out, actually. That's awesome. Yeah, the whole Melchizedek priesthood thing is not really something that I've checked out too much, honestly. I used this analogy before, but it's like, you're in a cave and then you puncture through a wall and there's like a whole nother part of the cave you haven't explored yet. That's really how I feel going like deeper into the biblical symbolism. It's like I did the whole first layer and I was like, oh cool, I have a grip on this, and then I was like puncturing like 10,000 miles underground. And I was like, oh cool, actually I like barely know what I'm talking about in like any capacity. All right, I could have made the skull a little bigger, but it's fine. I guess we'll make him a little hunched is the thing. It'll probably come out good, but let's just see. I'm going to make his neck coming out here. Yeah, it's actually pretty dope. And I think this is all just going to be black, so I'm not even going to bother painting in a body. And if I go with the full black, what I'm going to do is have like a window inside him that you can see through to something else. That's what I like to do if I take up the whole space like that. Yeah, perfect. Perfect. There we go. Cool. Literally after the last episode of season 1, I sit here before we start and just move the paint around and move the lamps around to make sure there's no glare. Like I owe it to the people to have no glare. All right. And then the chest, I don't want to make it too big, but I think we'll just have it kind of come out like normal. Boom. Yeah, that looks awesome. That's exactly what I wanted. And I'm going to push it a little bit because I really want to give this guy a beard. I really want to give him a beard. Let's go pointy beard. He's kind of a villain, right? I mean, I don't want to get too into cartoon world, but I think that a pointy beard would be perfect. So we're just going to give him the beard. And we'll kind of like blend it onto the face. Yeah! Oh, man. Yes. I'm so pleased with how that turned out. Okay. And what I'm going to do is, so, quick little detour. Perfect. Expo marker. So, when you draw someone's face, let's say, I'm just going to quickly just put in like someone's face. If you read my still life tutorial on drawing, forget that mark, it doesn't matter though. Shadow shapes are something that's really powerful to work with. So when you have someone's face that's like largely in shadow, if you just leave the bottom eyelid in, even if it's like comically large like that, so I'm just going to throw in all this darkness, your eye will read it like it's just light being caught on the bottom lid. You could do the top lid also, but it's fine. So like even something like this, you can see your eye is starting to see it as like a shaded face. So even if I just kind of like start to put it in, you can see even this, your eye is starting to read it as like a shaded face. It better. Just kidding. And then same deal on the other side, So it's all about the shadow shapes, really. Even if you're not doing something realistic, like obviously what I'm doing is not realistic at all. But I'm going to utilize that right now because I'm just going to leave that lower lid right there lit up. And I think your eye is going to read it as like part of his eye illuminated. Or your eye could read it as the top lid. It doesn't really matter, but I think it'll be seen as like his eye like catching the darkness, which is pretty dope. Yeah, that's perfect. And I'll leave his chin kind of like coming out of the darkness. So I'm going to it's a little risky, but I think it'll be cool. Yeah, and then everything else is just going to be black. Perfect. This is great. Oh yeah, and in case it's your first time here, you have to tag me like how Peter M did, where it says @Owen Cyclops. Otherwise, there's no way I'm going to see it. Yeah, the Melchizedek stuff comes up a lot. I think it's a thing in like Mormonism too. I actually have this book. It's really funny. This is not a book I recommend anyone checking out. It's like literally the most pure, like new age, crazy, like just like kind of like nonsensical shit. But it's by a guy named Drunvalo Melchizedek. And I was living with a guy who was really into like studying the Bible basically. And I brought it home and I was reading it. I mean, he was down. He knew I was like, just reading it like kind of like for fun, I guess you could say. And he saw the title and he was like, whoa, that's a heck of a name to use. And I was like, oh, you don't think it's his real name? And he laughed at me. He was like, no, dude. And he told me all about the Melchizedek, and that's actually how I learned about it. So I always think about that when I see that name. I think about this weird new age guy who chose the name Drunvalo Melchizedek. Anyway, okay, and I'm going to leave this big window open in him. I don't know what we're going to do with it. I'll decide if I want it to be like significant, like something inside of him, or if it's just going to be like a random like pictorial element, but let's see. And yeah, the interesting thing about this guy Balaam is, so eventually what happens to him, in case anyone doesn't know, I didn't know actually, is he goes to the king of the Moabites and he's like, okay, curse the Israelites, and they're kind of like up on this hill, kind of. They're up in a few places. It happens a few times. And he is supposed to curse them, but all he can do is like bless them basically and utter these prophecies that are all about, kind of how awesome it's going to be for them. And the king obviously doesn't like that and gets really mad. But again, I thought that was interesting because one of the prophecies, don't quote me too much on this. I didn't get to read it fully before I started the show, honestly. I didn't fully finish the book of Numbers yet. I mean, I know about it. Like, I read about the summary and the themes, and I did my research, but just saying, I didn't like fully go as hard as I wanted to. But I'm pretty sure one of the prophecies Balaam utters is all about like a future king who's going to like bring this like redemption. And I think it's like one of the types for Jesus in the book of Numbers. And either way, I thought it was interesting because Balaam like is a prophet. He like has the ability to do prophecy, even though he is not one of the Israelites. And he's kind of like a bad prophet because what's basically insinuated in the text, and like later it goes into it, is that somehow after he is like bound to only utter like blessings for the Israelites, he gives up the clues for how to corrupt them and talks about like, I don't know if this is explicit or implicit, but that they can be corrupted via like offering having them eat food that's been offered to idols, and sexual immorality is like a big part of it. I think it's in like 2 Peter or something. I wrote it down somewhere, but honestly, I'm not going to like stop the stream to like dig it out. But it mentions Balaam somewhere else. I think that it's up in the air if it's the same Balaam in 2 Peter, but then in Revelation and somewhere else, this specific Balaam is mentioned. So yeah, he's like this guy that has the ability to do prophecy, but he's also not a good guy. He's like a bad guy. So I thought it was interesting, and it kind of fits with what I was talking about in the beginning, where the whole book of Numbers, like the whole symbolism of it is about these like double-edged swords, where this guy has the ability to do prophecy and speak with God, but he's not a good guy. Like God is like using him for this purpose. And then while this is all going on, while Balaam is like only able to utter blessings for the Israelites, they're down in the valley basically like turning their backs on God even further. So like God's blessing them, and that's unbeknownst to them, and then they're down in the valley, like, you know, not cursing him, but basically not really doing what they should be doing. So yeah, it's like I said, like the whole book is like on this razor's edge of like, now we're on this side, now we're on this side. It's like a seesaw back and forth, like that double-edged sword. Okay, so purely for pictorial reasons, what I want to do right now, kind of wish I could just push this over a little bit to the left, but it's okay. I'm not going to like cry about it. We'll just kind of work with it. Sometimes things are a little bit better when they're off-center actually, so we'll kind of just roll with it. Especially, this is actually a good picture-making clue for anyone. This is just my opinion. But if you have a figure facing in a particular direction in an image, it could be like this, it could be a portrait, realistic, doesn't really matter. Wherever is in front of their face, where they're looking, you often do want to put a little bit more room there. Because if you had like a left-facing face and it was perfectly centered, the eye, the viewer, when they're looking at it, wants a little bit of room in front of their face. It's like if you imagine if you had a picture and a wall was like a foot in front of someone's face, it would kind of make you uncomfortable looking at it, right? That's kind of the effect that you get. So I guess it's pretty good actually that they're facing the left and we have them a little bit too much over to the right. Not a big deal. So there's two kings that get defeated in the book of Numbers on the way for all this to go down. One of them has a really awesome name. His name is King Og. Just O-G, King Og. I thought that was pretty awesome. The other one's name starts with S-H. Forget it right now. Doesn't really matter. I left my notes on my desk over here, but you know, we'll just keep going. It's not a big deal. Point is, though, because these two kings are defeated, I thought it would be a cool element. Down at the bottom, I want to have these two crowns that are on their side, like these two overturned crowns, and then we'll have stuff coming out of it. So we'll have these two overturned crowns on the left and right. Over here, we'll have the flaming sword. Over here, we'll have like a staff, and then we'll get snake situation. We'll get the sky going on. It's going to be dope, actually. For the crowns, I don't want to paint them in gold because gold implies kind of like goodness. I guess I could make them gray. Should we ride the gray theme a little bit more? Maybe we should. I'll make them like metal. I'll make them just like a generic metal-y color. I'll make them like a gray-brown. Is that going to look good? Who knows? Let's find out right now. Yeah, someone in the chat said they know Drunvalo Melchizedek. Yeah, he's crazy. He's giving room in front of faces in film, too. Oh, nice. That's interesting, dude. Yeah, it's really interesting for me because film is kind of like, you know, if I live in like picture-making world, like 2D flat picture-making world, film is like this strange realm beyond the mountains. It's like this strange field that is at once like extremely similar and almost like the same as picture making, but then at the same time it's completely different and has like nothing to do with it. It's like a weird cousin. Film is like a weird cousin that I have as a painter. That's a good way for me to say it. Okay, so I'm gonna throw down these crowns right now. And then yeah, the plan is I'm gonna get this flaming sword and I want to have a snake over here, and then I don't want to reveal what I want over here yet, but something dope. And I think here, maybe I'll just use the really kind of like dead gray to my advantage. I mentioned that just mixing black and white kind of makes it like a dead gray, but maybe that could be a good thing. Because I'm going to have a lot of stuff over here, and I don't want it to look like 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag. So, let's see. Maybe I'll just throw it down totally flat. Let's see. So I'm going to put down... It's really loose paint, so it's going to come out really thick, but it's okay. Boom. Boom. Yeah, perfect. That's perfect. Let's make it a little bigger, actually. Yeah, I see in the chat, maybe tarnish bronze for the crowns. Yeah, so I was thinking about bronze, but the thing is, I guess I'll just say it. What I'm going to put over here is going to be the brazen serpent, the bronze serpent. So at first I was thinking I didn't want to use bronze color down here, but actually what I'm thinking is that the next crown, I will make it bronze color. And that'll just be a test for me to mix the bronze color, actually. This one will be gray, though. I'll make the top a little bit more light gray. Boom. I'm just going to throw it down. It's going to be straight, pointy crown. Boom. Boom. That's the nice thing about reading the Old Testament. You never have to go too far without some war or like battle happening. Wish I remembered this king's name. It's like King. It's not King Shiloh. Shiloh is the place where they like lose the Ark of the Covenant or something later on. But it starts with an SH. So we'll throw down this silver crown over here. I guess silver's pretty good too. We can call it tin. So we'll throw down this one crown over here. Perfect. And we'll throw down one over here on the other side too. And let's see. I'll mix in this raw sienna that I have here to see if I can get that kind of tarnishy bronze color going on. Cool. It's also interesting, you know, like I said, we did something not like this, but, you know, we made another picture last week. And working in, like, the Old Testament symbolism, I'm never sure how much I should dial up, like, the desert thing. The desert is kind of like a visual realm that I haven't fully explored, and it has its own world to it. Although I guess it's not really desert. I mean, I guess it is desert, but it's kind of a weird landscape in, like, the Levant, right? In my mind, you have like desert right up next to like rivers and forests. I mean, they're in the wilderness in the book of Numbers. It's called In the Wilderness, literally. That's the actual title of the book. I don't know why. I literally don't know why in English they call it the book of Numbers. But okay, cool. I'll make this a little bit lighter over here. So yeah, tapping into the landscape and how much I want to like tap into that has been an interesting element of it. Not really getting the bronze effect. There we go. It's perfect. Cylon, king of Amorites. Yeah, that's his name. Nice. I mean, he only plays into the book just like to get defeated. That's the only reason why he's mentioned. But and yeah, the other guy's name is King Og. Whenever I'm reading this stuff, honestly, I'm like, wow, if I needed like a fake Twitter name, I would definitely use that, King Og. That's awesome. All right, so we got these two defeated kings. If we take it there, I'll throw some blood down here. Getting the blood in is always nice, but we'll see if we need that. Make this border nice. Perfect. Cool. Okay, next in front of the donkey, I want to put this flaming sword. So when the angel comes, I'm pretty sure it says in there he has the flaming sword, but either way, biblical style, flaming sword is a perfect symbol for an angel like that. So that's what I want to get going on. The thing is, I hope that's not too loud. I have the jar right next to the mic. I'll listen back to it and see how loud it is. Normally I would paint in the blade of the sword as gray. But I kind of want it, I have to kind of decide, I guess, if I want it coming out of the crown, or maybe it could be just above it and it's like stuck in the ground. I mean, obviously, we'll go that way. We'll do it that way. So I'm going to paint in the sword itself. And I'm kind of just going to grab like any random gray. It doesn't really matter. Now that I'm doing the streams, I try and just keep it moving, basically. It's funny, I've showed it before, but I have these like tiny brushes, and my instinct is always to... can I get more light over there? Yeah, that's way better. Nice. To get like hyper into the detail, so I'm trying to fight that. And I'm just going to throw down one side of the sword. Boom. Perfect. Cool. Make it a little bigger. And it'll be stuck in the ground. I'll kind of put like a ground color down and just put a line there at the bottom so it's like stuck in. Boom. Perfect. Cool. And then the other side I'll make it a little bit darker. So it looks like it's like this, like a double-edged sword. Look, it's all coming together. You can hear the birds outside. #1 cozy painting, symbolic, informational, theological, live painting stream on the internet. Take that, Steph and Molly, now. I am the #1 bird stream on the internet. Cannot compete.
I only say that because he always says #1 philosophy show, and I feel like it's so pretentious, but it's fine. I actually like him. I'm making fun of him the way I'd make fun of a friend or something. Okay, so those two colors are a little close. I'm hoping the one on the left dries darker than the one on the right, but I think it's fine. I mean, I can always go back. It's not a big deal if it doesn't really dry the color I want. I'm going to put in the hilt of the sword, the handle of the sword right now. I'm just going to use raw umber. This is like a nice, like muted, leathery brown. And I really want to get the flames going. I want to get this snake going. I'm thinking about what I'm going to put in Balaam in the center over here. This is the part of the Bible where Moses is told to hit the rock to bring forth water for the people. And he disobeys God. Instead of hitting it once, he hits it twice. And also he says, it's when the people are like doubting him, and he says, do we need to bring forth water from this rock for you? Instead of saying like, God's doing this, he's kind of like, do we need to do it? Like me? I guess it's ambiguous if he's saying me and God or me and, you know, the crew that's leading you. But either way, that's how he disqualifies himself from entering the promised land himself. So I might put that rock with the water flowing out of it somewhere in here. I think that would be cool. Also, as long as we're all doing the 101 books of the Bible thing, so that happens, right? This was like a big like key for me to like understanding the order of the books of the Old Testament when I was first looking into this stuff. So that happens, right? Moses disqualifies himself from entering the promised land. And then at the end of the book of Numbers, they're like about to enter the promised land, right? And then it stops. And then Moses gives this big speech to them. And then I'm pretty sure he dies right after the speech. But that whole big speech is Deuteronomy, right? Deuteronomy is Moses talking to them before they enter the promised land and before he has to make an exit, you could say. So that's how this fits into that part of the story. I'm actually just going to grab a little bit of the paper towel. I didn't actually, normally literally everything I say before the stream that's about Bible stuff, I just like check to make sure it isn't something I accidentally picked up along the way, but I think I'm good on what I just said. It's funny with like the esoterica and like UFO and like conspiracy stuff, like I'll just like shoot off, like I'm down. Like not that it's, I mean it's accurate, obviously everything I say to you guys is true, but I'm like boom, 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 boom. But then with the Bible stuff, I'm like, let me just check before I potentially mislead. Which I think is good. I think that's reasonable. Okay, so we got the sword over here. I'm going to paint in a staff the same color. Just kind of like a generic staff. There's lots of staffs in the stories. Balaam's staff, Moses' staff when he hits the rock. So I'm going to paint in the staff over here. Then we'll get the flames going, and we'll kind of get some more like color going right now. We're like floating in the setup. I feel like the painting is always like first half is like setup, and then the second half is like boom, 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 boom. And things start looking really dope. Also a color scheme kind of like naturally materializes. I guess the staff also has its own like set of like symbols and like symbolic meanings. I mean, it's kind of like a magic wand. If I can remove like all the Harry Potter and also like black magic, the staff in general, not like any specific staff in one of these stories, but a staff is kind of like the what's the word I'm looking for? The interventional, like intercessionary active force. It's like this active principle. It's like a masculine active principle that's like reaching out into the world and like making things happen. Let's assume there's like some branches on the staff, just to make it look a little bit more like a wooden staff. What would be really sick is if I had blood on the bottom of the sword and then I put water at the bottom of the staff. That would be sick, actually. I might do that. Yeah, I think I will do that. We need some like color. We're really in hardcore gray and brown world over here. Cool. Okay. Cool. Flame color, obviously I'm going to grab cadmium scarlet. This is my version of vermilion. If you were using classical pigments, it would be called vermilion. And I'm just going to go in hard on the flames right now. And then I'm going to take that umber color that I outlined the donkey in and just put a little line like it's stuck in the earth. If this were a painting off stream, I'd probably get a smaller brush and like hyper obsessive out over it, but I want to keep it moving. Boom. Perfect. Okay, let's see how I want to do this. So I'm gonna try and just boom. Should make it a little bit more wet. Look at this color, so good. Honestly, I really encourage other people to paint. Nothing beats just like laying down like bright, intense colors. It's just so satisfying. And I'll exaggerate the flame a little bit. Might as well make it cool. We all came out here. And what I'm going to do is put a snake above this over here. So I'm going to have this kind of like cobra snake coming out. Later, a bunch of people are punished via snakes, and then we have the bronze snake. So snakes is kind of going to be the other like theme of what's going on. And we'll talk about the bronze serpent. That's like a really weird one for me. Boom. And what's really dope to do with the flames is I'm going to have one flame coming back to like hug in. I think that always looks really tight. I have to be careful because the paint is water soluble and there's water in the paint. So even once it dries, if I go over it too much, it'll start to kick up the paint below it and then it'll be gray. It's like I came in a little bit too far over there, but it's not a big deal. Nobody needs to know. I can just come back in with the flame right there. Perfect. I could leave it like that. It looks kind of tough with just the little flame on the bottom, but I'm going to make it more intense because I want to. So we're going to get one, boom. I like to make sure the tips are really pointy. We'll just leave it like that. That's enough. Yeah, that looks dope. Perfect. And on the other side, I am going to put water at the bottom of the staff. After I said that, I realized that sounds kind of cool. So, also the red and blue is one of my favorite sets of colors to like offset each other. I might even put just like drops of water like coming off the staff, and then we'll go full like symbolic mode. It's kind of like you have like layers of complexity when you start working with like different symbol sets, but I like to offset like really basic ones like anyone could pick up on. So like fire and water is probably like the most basic one. It would be earth and air if you're talking like 4 elements, like most basic building blocks of like symbolic human thought. But the problem is you can't really paint air. You can paint wind, but not really, right? So fire and water really takes the cake. Throwing down this cobalt blue. Look at these two colors next to each other. So good. So good. Love it. Can you see it on the stream? Yeah, you definitely can. It's like the most pure manifestations of like red and blue. Perfect. And I'm just going to throw down some drops of water. I think the last... Oh, perfect. I think the last lighting step, the last thing I'll do is get like lights over my shoulder. But we'll burn that bridge later. And yeah, I'm just going to have these big water droplets. Ever since I integrated it, when I started doing like Mary symbolism and things like that, the teardrop is just such a good symbol to drop in the art. I'm feeling it so hard. And then you can also use the drop of blood, those two things together. It's just perfect. It also is so suited for Christian art because you have the teardrop and like mourning and sadness, and then you have the drop of blood. Oh, it's just so good. And they're the same shape and they're opposite colors, and the colors perfectly offset each other. What more could you want? What more proof do you need that this is what we're supposed to be doing, obviously? I'm actually working on this Arma Christi image, like the tools of the Passion, like Jesus' Passion, and it's looking sick. I'm probably going to drop that like next week. And it has a big drop of blood in the center, and it's really tight. All right, cool. And I'll put some water at the bottom, too. Why not? They had a lot of water. They had a lot of people. A lot of people had to drink, so. Okay, and now I'm going to paint in this cobra, and I'm hoping that's going to kick up like the toughness factor by like 1,000,000. So basically sometime later... And we're going to have the cobra offset with the brazen serpent, with the bronze serpent. So sometime later in the book of Numbers, I actually don't know if it's before or after the whole Balaam thing, but it doesn't really matter, honestly, especially for our purposes right now. Again, they're like complaining and being like unhappy, basically. So God sends these venomous snakes. In the KJV, actually, it says fiery snakes, and I was going to paint them on fire. But I don't think they actually are, and more importantly, I'm not sure it would look good in the picture. If I think it'll look good in the picture, I'll do it. But I don't know if it will. But he sends these snakes, and a bunch of people get bitten by snakes. So we're going to put this big, like, rearing cobra up here. I want it to be, like, coming up. Kind of, we have this little ambiguous space here. So it'll be coming up, and his face will be right here. And we'll put in, I wonder how low I should put it. I kind of have to put it either higher than Balaam's face or lower than Balaam's face. I'll put it, like, down here. And I'll have the hood coming out. And then over here, we'll have the bronze serpent. So what happens is these serpents come, and they bite a bunch of people, and everyone's like, oh my God, we're sorry, like, what do we do? And God tells Moses to make a brazen serpent. In some translations, it's brass, sometimes it's bronze. In one, it was even copper, actually, whatever. To make the serpent out of some metal in that vicinity, and put it up on this, like, signal staff, it's called. I guess it's just a big staff. And whoever looks at the bronze serpent is healed from the venom. Obviously, it's like a really weird parallel for Jesus in the Bible, because this creature is put up on this forked staff that, like, heals people. And actually, in the book of John, I think it's in John, the Gospel of John, obviously, that parallel is made explicit. I think Jesus even says it. I think Jesus is the one that says, he basically makes the parallel I just said, like, just as this creature was lifted up in the desert to heal, so too does the Son of Man have to be lifted up to, like, redeem the world, basically. Something like that. I'm getting better at, like, anticipating what quotes I need and having them on deck, but that's basically what it says. So we'll talk about that and how it's weird that it's a snake, but I want to get in painting that snake right now. And yeah, someone said I could have it lower and looking up at it hissing, but the thing is, that is a good idea. But what I'm thinking is I want it to be visually parallel with the snake on a pole. So I'm probably going to, this actually is a good way to, like, see what I want to do. I never did that before. I'll probably have it, like, about this tall. That'll give me enough room. And the thing is also, Balaam is black, so no matter what happens around the rest of the picture, he's going to stick out a lot. So it'll be fine, honestly, no matter what. I'm not really worried about it. What it really depends on is just what color I want to make the snake outlined in. I could do it in the same color, this burnt umber that I outlined the donkey in, and then that would marry the elements together. That's a really good word to use if you're making pictures, like thinking about how you can, like, wed different elements of the picture and how you can, like, tie them together. Often color is a good way to do that. But what I'm honestly thinking is that it might be too dark. It might be too dark, and then the darkness is going to be off a little bit. I'm tempted to use this color. I mean, it'll touch, but it could look kind of, like, badass, actually, if I have, like, the same color and it's outlined. It might look, like, kind of sophisticated. It also might look kind of cloudy then. Get a little cloudy problem. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mix the colors together, actually. Burnt umber. So once again, I'm going to say this like most streams, but the burnt reds are, the burnt browns are really red, and the raw browns are really yellow. So this is burnt umber, so it's more red. And I'm actually going to use the, I guess I'm not going to use it if I can't find it. I was going to use the, yeah, it doesn't matter. I was going to use my painting knife, but I can't even find it. I've so committed to mixing paint with the brushes, but it's fine. Yeah, snake wrapped around a tree. Yeah, that would be tight. But I'm pretty married to, like, the rearing. I want it to be, like, rearing. You'll see what I'm thinking in a second. So I'm just mixing these colors together. Doesn't really matter how perfect it is. In fact, if it varies a little bit, it'll be fine. But the reason I'm always, like, hating on people mixing with brushes is because you almost never get it mixed perfectly. But it's fine for right now. Okay. And I'm going to have it facing away from him, actually. So let's see. How do I want to do this? I think I'm just going to throw down, make sure I have the right amount of paint on the brush. Yeah, perfect. I'm going to paint in the mouth. And the thing is, the cobras are kind of hard to paint in because really you kind of want the hood, well, this is just what I want. You want the hood behind them to, like, be kind of like a dark halo, like, behind them, but, and I don't want it to look happy. Sometimes if you put in the teeth like this, it accidentally ends up looking happy, so I'm going to make sure it comes down. Give them some more teeth on the other side. Yeah, it's true. Snake in a tree would make it look like Garden of Eden. But honestly, I'm just kind of married to the rearing snake for some reason. I think it's because it's the cobra. I want to give him like the... Perfect. And I gave him a really big bottom jaw. I think that gives him kind of like a brutal, like primitive feel. It's kind of like a person. If you painted a man with like a huge bottom jaw, then makes him look kind of like... what's the word I'm looking for? Like caveman-y? Caveman-y is kind of the word I'm looking for. And this headline back here is a little in too much, so I'm just going to bump it out a tiny bit. Yeah. And then we're just going to come all the way down. Perfect. I'm wondering, sometimes when you're married to things in a picture, like when you are really committed to like definitely having it one way, those are the things that might like mess it up because it prevents things from... Oh, I hit both flames. Okay, here's a little picture lesson. This is called a tangent. A tangent is when you have two elements that accidentally, like coincidentally, the edges of them touch each other, and it kind of messes up like how the viewer sees the picture. Actually, this is a really good thing to know if you're watching the stream. So let's say, it could be literally anything. It could be like, let's say you were drawing a picture, right? And you were drawing a picture in your kitchen, which you should be doing during quarantine. Learn to draw during quarantine. And you got the table over here, you know, and let's say you have this apple. You're drawing an apple on the table. And then you put the back of the table in. And then you're like, oh, just like Owen said, I'm going to put down the shadow. Oh, it's so good, my apple, right? But then in the background, let's say like your fridge is in the background or something. And let's say at the back of your fridge, you're like, oh, I'm going to draw the fridge. Uh-oh. Boom. If the back of the fridge meets up with like these edges here, it kind of makes the eye be like, wait, what? Is this in the background or not? Or what's going on? You can imagine the reverse. If your fridge was like back here, then it's really clear that it's behind the apple, right? So when you have one of those lines, or maybe you have a pencil on the table, and let's say the pencil like perfectly touches the bottom of the apple or something, that's called a tangent when those two lines meet up. And you really don't want that. This is a nice like little illustration tip. So it's really not a big deal, but I'll come back in and just beef the flames up. But I just thought that was a really good illustration of something I never have talked about yet on the stream. So it's called a tangent. Not a big deal, but it's okay. And I'm going to have it snake around the back over here. So he's kind of like sitting in like a little coiled up ball. And I kind of want the tail poking out a little bit over here. This could definitely be a like 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag moment, but I think it's fine. Cool. That looks dope. And yeah, I was really married to the hood, but I'm kind of worried that if I make this big hood, that it's going to touch his beard and then make everything look kind of weird. I'm really, really torn, actually, if I should give it the hood or not. I really can't tell. Maybe I should just go for it. I don't know. Yeah, let's just do it. Let's be decisive on the stream. Yeah, come on, we need the hood in there. He's like a cobra. Perfect. Yeah, it's actually pretty dope. And then same deal on this side. I don't want it to come out too far, but... Yeah, that was such a good call. Perfect. Wow. Yeah, I'm so glad we did that. That looks bad ass right now. I'm trying not to curse because someone said they watch with their kid. Maybe that was a joke or not, but it's a good reason not to. And then to make it visually interesting, what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw down these rings, just like these colors coming down. I'm actually, you know, instead of leaning away from the gray, brown, black color scheme we have going on, I'm actually going to lean into it. And I'm just going to throw down those rings straight up with yellow ochre. Yellow ochre is a really good, in a good way, it's like a dull color. It's like a nice clay, warm yellow. And actually, if you're mixing colors and you're not doing what I normally do, which is have every color possible be full blast, yellow ochre will also dull any color. So if you were doing realistic painting and you drop the cobalt blue down and you're like, oh, I just want to like cut that a little bit and make it not so intense. Like if you see someone with a blue shirt in real life, it's not going to be that color. Yellow ochre is a really good way to dull those colors. And I'm just going to throw down these rings. I don't know what colors we're going to use on the snake yet, but we'll figure it out. This will also give the snake like a little bit of form, because these like ring lines coming down will imply that it's like a tube instead of just like a flat snake. That's fine. Cool. Look at this little loop back here too. I am obviously going to go huge red eye with the red tongue. In terms of the hood, I'm going to leave it and I'll probably hit it with a gradient. Normally, if I draw a cobra like this or a snake like this, I use the hood and I'll put like some really dope patterns or something on the hood. But right now, I am not going to do that. Actually, I have a cobra like this drawn. I didn't even think of that. I have one over here and I will pull it up. Sometimes I draw on cardboard for sketchbook stuff. So actually I have this cobra over here. This is basically what I was thinking of, but I didn't think to pull it out. But you can see that normally if I use the cobra, I'll like put something in here. I put these spherical forms here. It's just a random sketch. Doesn't really mean anything. Anyway, though. Sometimes I use the hood, but here I don't want it to start to conflict with like the very clear forms that we have going on, so I'm not going to do that. I am just going to put in... Actually, I was going to put in the red eye, but I'm going to pull some of the color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get just a tiny bit of yellow ochre on my brush and just fade up the color. Yeah, just like this. Perfect. And just see what I want to do with the color. Man, when you get the paper shining through it, the gold is so beautiful with the yellow ochre. Honestly, it's great. That's a really nice thing about watercolors. What you're doing really is letting the paper shine through. So it always has this kind of like luminous effect whenever you let it like do its thing. Yeah, it looks awesome. Of course, I'm going to have to go in and like apply this shading elsewhere so this doesn't stand out too much, but I really think that was a good call. It's very like visually pleasing. Did you even just add like a tiny element of chance, I guess? You could say chaos, I suppose. A tiny element of randomness in a way, to the image. Lack of control is really the word. It's not random. Yeah, perfect. And I'm just going to grab some water. Yeah, this looks dope. I'm really tempted to drop the red eye down while the page is still wet, but I'm not going to do it. Could bleed out a little bit. Cool. Nice. This looks dope. And I guess if anyone wants to ask me something, we can. I mean, we're going to talk about the brazen serpent. Like I said, I'm still working on perfectly doing like chat discussion while I have like symbolism stuff I want to talk about, but we're pretty far in. So if anyone wants to ask me anything, we can do it that way. Yeah, I just made his face a little bit darker over there. I think it's cool, though. I think it's cool. And I guess I could throw up the hood in a color. To be honest with you, I think it would be tight to throw up the hood with a little bit of this red. I'm wondering if I should dull it down or if I should just go for it. I'll dull it down a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, that's tight. But it's too dull. I kind of knew that would happen. Yeah. Now it's too dark, but I mean, rather have the volume too high than too low. Perfect. That's sick. Boom. We'll pull this up a little bit over here. Man, I love that there's something about the black paint that makes it way less likely to like bleed out like that, and it's super useful, honestly, with picture making. Yeah, I want to get a little bit of that gold. Perfect. Gold and red. What can beat that? Perfect. This looks sick. Of course, this means we're setting kind of a high bar for the brazen serpent on the other side, but it's cool. We'll just kind of have it fade out almost to the white of the page, but not fully. Cool. Perfect. Nice. Love how that came out. What if snakes wrapped around a tree? For inside Balaam, scepter next to all-seeing eye. Balaam was torn on whether to serve God or his king. Yeah, something about that. Something about his inner conflict. That could be cool, actually. Would omitting eyes on a figure in a painting carry any meaning? It depends. If you were doing like a realistic oil painting, then yeah, that would be really creepy. If you're doing like a flat, like 2D picture, yeah, you could probably get away with it. One sec. So I'm going to paint in the staff over here. I will answer your question, but I'm going to paint in the staff over here. For that, I am going to use the straight raw umber. I mean, the burnt umber that I use for outlining the donkey. I want to make sure it looks good because the thing is the cobra looks really dope, so I want to make sure the brazen serpent looks really dope also. So we're going to grab that. How far are we in? Oh, we're 90 minutes in. Cool. That's good. The last half hour is like always harvesting like the dopeness. It's like you've cultivated all this like dopeness, and then you can finally like bring the hammer down and like harvest it. Omitting the eyes. Yeah. Oh yeah, true. There's no eyes. Yeah. Well, I put this line in for the donkey. It's kind of like a cop out, I guess. But yeah, I mean, just like in a Jungian sense, like eyes, vision, not being able to see, lacking vision. It's more symbolic, I guess, if you have one eye and then not the other eye. That's a whole big like set of archetypes right there. A lot of figures in like mythology and stuff like that will lose one eye, and then they'll gain some type of like spiritual sight. It's like symbolic of them being able to see like beyond like the physical plane. Think about the staff. So it's so good I just mentioned tangents. I want to put it right there, but I'm going to hit the edge of the teardrop. So I really have to commit and either have it behind this stuff or over here. The thing is, I feel like, well, you know what I'm going to do? I don't really want to put it behind this stuff because I don't want to get too like messy in terms of picture placement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it to the left a little bit too much, and then we'll have the snake hanging off a little bit to the right too much, and I think it'll balance out. Honestly, though, the real thing about omitting eyes, especially in pictures that I make, is that it's really that if you give something like a realistic eye, the viewer will start to read it as like a character rather than a symbol, if that makes sense. Like, you can imagine, like, if at the bottom of this picture, perfect example, if I put like a frog down here, maybe a bigger, maybe let's just say hypothetically, whatever, I put like a big toad down here or something, if I paint in the eyes really hardcore and give the eyes like some level of like personality, and you can see the pupil and the iris, and you can see the little white dot shine in the eye, then the viewer, the person looking at the picture, will read that as like a character, like a living, like, oh, that's like this frog who's like in this story. But if you don't do that, then it's just like archetypal, then it's just like an image of like a generic frog, if that makes sense. So for the snake, for example, I'm going to put like a graphic eye in. I wouldn't do that with the donkey. That's usually why I do it. Like if I was painting, like, let's just say hypothetically I was illustrating like a fairy tale or something where one of the characters was an animal and I wanted the viewer to empathize with that character, then yeah, I would personalize the eyes up really hard, and I'd always put that like white shine in. Makes it look alive, basically. But then if I was painting like, Egyptian hieroglyphic style or like a medieval painting or something like that, I would never do it. That's really the only reason why I do or don't do it. Normally when you paint at this point in the stream, something is staring at me. That's funny, actually. Okay, so we got this signal staff up here. I'm just calling it that because that's what I saw it called in two different Bibles, and I thought it sounded really cool. In the Bible commentary, not in the actual translation itself. So what I'm going to do is, normally when I've painted, so I have a very weird relationship to picturizing. I should just lean into making up words on the stream, to illustrating the brazen serpent, because sometimes it looks kind of wimpy, because like you have this big staff and then you just put this like tiny little like weird looking serpent up at the top. So I think what I'm going to do is make it kind of like a fat upside down U and just have it hanging like that. I kind of want to make it a similar color. It's like brass, bronze. Part of me just wants to use the yellow ochre. I mean, it kind of is like that gray metal color. I think I'm going to grab a little bit of the gray down here and just do that. It's also interesting because if anyone can answer this, I'm very interested because I couldn't figure out the answer. So the snakes come, right? And then God says to Moses, like, hey, make a bronze serpent or copper or whatever, it doesn't matter, and put it up on the staff, right? And you're like, all right, that makes sense. How did you just whip up a copper serpent? Like, what? Are they like porting around like metallurgy kits and like blacksmithing on the go? I mean, I guess they are, now that I'm saying it. They're like a lot of people traveling around, but still, does that really make sense? So I looked into it. I thought maybe I stumbled on like some secret, like, oh, he, you know. But I don't know. I couldn't really figure it out. And I'm kind of torn on, you know, like what I just said. Like, are they like casting metal and as they're traveling? I mean, I guess they are. They're wandering for like 40 years, right? Okay, I'm going to throw down. The thing is, if anyone's worked with metal, like artistically, I've never, makes me sound like a freaking loser, but I've never worked with like metal like in the traditional masculine way, like working with metal, but I have worked with it for making art. I'm sorry, that's just what my past is. But copper is pretty soft, especially when you get it down to like, like thin wires and stuff like that. At least the copper wire, not wiring like for a house, like copper wire to like make a sculpture or something. It's pretty soft. So I don't know. When I read this, I was like, maybe they had some metal and they just kind of twisted it up to make like a snake or something. But I'd really like a good answer on that. Oh, it's a perfect color. And I might put some like orb of yellow light around the serpent to kind of balance out the frankly like really tough thing over here. Yeah, they had metallurgists. Yeah, same deal with the golden calf. That's actually really true. Yeah. As I was saying it, I was like, yeah, I guess that does make sense, but yeah. Boom. Perfect. Got the big head going on. Cool. I want to make the tail a little bit bigger. This is perfect, though. And I might come in... I don't know. I'm kind of torn on how to handle the serpent over here. It's perfect visually balanced, but I might put in like a halo or something like that. What I want to do, let's see how far are we. We got like 20 minutes left. I'm going to quickly put in the background above them, and then we're going to come back in and see how it shakes out. Like I said, if anyone wants to ask me something, go for it. I'm kind of torn between having like, I think the hardcore like intermission, time for us to talk is too formal, but also like looking at the chat straight up while I'm working the whole time. I think there is some like middle ground. Okay, I'm going to quickly put down the eye for the serpent because I think it's going to look sick. One of my favorite things to do in art ever for all time, I'm like perpetually like 5 years old, is to have the mouth like this and then put in a tongue. Just like put in this big graphic, like scary kind of dragon tongue. Yes. Perfect. Boom. Oh, such a rookie move. I touched the paint over here. It doesn't matter though. Great. Man, it's going well. I really don't want to jinx myself, but oh yeah, I have to change my gloves. If anyone wants to ask me something, now is a good time, but it's going well. I feel like the planning, little meta review while it's going on. I feel like planning stuff out and having a theme is like way better than how we were doing it before. If anyone never saw before, we just straight up like winged it. But I think this is going a lot better. I'm actually really pleased with how it's going so far. Not just the show, just like the new iteration of it in general. Do you have any opinions on the band Tool in regards to music or spirituality? That's really funny. I never really checked out Tool, honestly. I do like rock music and stuff like that. But to be completely and totally candid and honest with you, the thing is, in high school, I knew a few kids. I wasn't like friends with them, but they were just kind of like the kind of like creepy, weird kids. Like I was like a weird kid, obviously, but I mean they would be like, breaking into like cars and shit. And they really liked Tool a lot, and I feel like that's what made me never really get into them. So it'd be interesting for me to go back now and like check out their music. Without that preconception. When you're like 14, I feel like every band you listen to, it's like almost more about like what it means that you're listening to that band than like actually checking it out. So I haven't really checked it out. I know they have a lot of like esoterica and like even like psychedelic and like occultic stuff in their music. And they work with Alex Grey, right? That's kind of how Alex Grey like got famous in some circles. He's the artist for Tool. But honestly, not really. I haven't fully delved into that world. But I'm open to someone who is familiar with, I guess you could say, my vibe or something, letting me know what you think about it. I'm actually curious. What else is going on? Do you recommend any podcasts? I thought I remember you saying you enjoyed the Higher Side Chats at one point. Yeah, it's an interesting one too. I like the Higher Side Chats. The only thing is, I'm not saying this like talking shit. I'm just being like realistic. He describes it this way. It's like a stoner podcast. So that vibe really permeates the whole situation. I'm putting these hills up here in the back. I thought that would be a cool move. So whenever I recommend it to people, I have to kind of give them that caveat. Also, he is not very... hold on one second. He's a cool host. The guy's name is Greg Carlwood. But as far as hosts go, I feel like there's a spectrum of like... I kind of just let people talk and do their thing versus like I'm aggressively like pulling information from this person. And I feel like he brings people on and just lets them talk. That could be good or bad, you know, that's his style. So I feel like because of that, the podcasts are very hit and miss with the higher side chats. Like sometimes, so what I'm going to do on these hills, I actually had a really dope idea. I'm going to put these two like burnt offerings up on the hills, and then we'll paint in like smoke and the night sky, and then we'll quickly come back down and kind of like fill out the rest of the picture. But just so you know, that's what's going on in my mind right now while we're talking. So yeah, the higher side chats is pretty cool just because he brings on like anyone and crazy people, insane people and everything. But it is very like stoner podcast. Like that's like, I mean, I think there's literally like a bong rip in the intro. So whenever I mention it, if anyone's like, you know, knowing me from Twitter, I feel like I have to just like mention that. I'm going to put this burnt offering down here. We'll put a few. Just put a few like burnt offerings in the back. That's pretty cool actually. Put one right here too. Otherwise, though, honestly, not really, man. It's really hard for me to find one that I am like on the same page with. To be honest with you, whenever I check out random media, I basically just accept the level of like difference that the person is from me. Like I was listening to this thing back when I used to work this job across the street. Doesn't matter what it is, but I worked this job, you know, a few blocks over. Basically like cleaning this like spot for this guy, and I would listen to this podcast called the Reformation Podcast where they talk about, you know, the Reformation, and it's pretty cool. But then whenever they go into like politics and stuff, I'm like, oh, it's that vibe. So you kind of just have to accept that like there's very few people on our page. So basically not really. I mean, Compot's one I check out, but not really. Most of what I listen to is I'll listen to debates, like theological debates in the studio, and then whenever I find someone that I think is interesting, I'll search their name on YouTube and just listen to their debates a lot. And that's mostly what I listen to when I'm working now. I've going through this guy James White, and his debates. He's like a Baptist guy, so obviously we don't agree on everything, put it that way. But he's pretty good at debating. He debates like Catholics and people on all different kinds of subjects and stuff like that. So that's been pretty cool to listen to. And then I saw him debating this Catholic guy, and the other guy was kind of cool, so I searched his name and listened to him do some debates. But that's mostly it. I can't really think of a podcast aside from like Contbots that I would like recommend to people. I mean, I'm sure the people on Twitter all have cool podcasts, but I'm sure you're familiar with them. What's your opinion on Mormonism? Oh, Mormonism. Well, you know what's interesting? I feel like asking me that. So I'm just going to paint in these flames on these burnt offerings, and then we'll throw down this like night sky over here. Well, the thing is that I feel like answering that kind of has to do with like what my vibe is about like the online space. Just like in general, I don't really feel the need to like police everyone and make sure people all like think the same thing as me. That's not a dig at anyone in particular, but that is to say that, you know, I disagree with certain like Mormon theological things, but I actually like the Mormons. You know, I think as people, they're pretty cool, even though we disagree on, you know, we have different theological views, you could say. But I feel like on the internet, if I get obsessed about like everyone, you know, agreeing with me, and sometimes I don't even know what I think about stuff, so. But it's interesting, man. I mean, it hits a lot of buttons for me. So with the caveat that I disagree with certain like theological posits of it, you could say some fundamental, you could say or some fundamental ones. Hits a lot of buttons for me because it is like I mean this very respectfully because I am weird. It's like weird, homegrown American manifestation of Christianity that has to do with like alternative historical timelines. I mean, that sounds great if you just phrase it that way, right? What else do I think about Mormonism? I mean, if you don't know anything, if someone feels like they don't really know the vibe of Mormonism, I'm not Mormon. This is just my opinion. I know some Mormon people follow me, so they probably have like strong takes about like what you should check out. But I think King Follett Discourse is a really good thing to check out if you're like, why do people feel so strongly about Mormonism? Not the Mormons, just other people. And, you know, how is it different from like quote unquote like normal Christianity? It's called the King Follett Discourse. Pretty sure it's the speech that Joseph Smith gave. Yo, that looks sick. I thought these would be like very minor in the background, but they look pretty sick. So yeah, I think it's a speech that Joseph Smith gave at this guy named King Follett. I'm actually going to take a paper towel and just dab up some of the flames just to see if I can make them a little bit lighter. Doesn't really matter, but yes, it's a speech Joseph Smith gave at this guy King Follett's funeral, and it's all about like he basically just lays out like the theological framework of Mormonism, and it's pretty cool to check out. Like I said, especially if you feel like you don't really know the deal. That's basically it, though. I kind of just view it as like a weird alt American manifestation of whatever you want to see it as. But I like the Mormons. The Mormons are cool. They're cool people. I'm sure I would enjoy diving into Mormon esoterica. I often do enjoy seeing what the Mormon take on like an issue is. Like, I feel like when I puncture into like a new like theological realm, like I'll figure out, like what's the, Calvinist view on this? What's like the Catholic view on this? What's the Orthodox view on this? And then after I've wrapped it all up, I'm like, oh yeah, behind door number 4, what do the Mormons think? And then I'll like check it out. So yeah, I've never read the Book of Mormon. I actually really do want to read it just because the whole like American scriptures and American Christianity thing is like very interesting to me. There is a really good book. It's not about Mormonism. There's a really good book called man, the smoke looks tough right now. Look at that, dude. While I'm talking to, there's a book by Penguin Classics called American Scriptures. And it's all about when Americans were heading west and settling America. And basically, like, if you were to take a non-theological and purely like historical view of the book and what it documents, is it's like as Americans were heading west and like settling the West, it's like they quote unquote like needed or wanted to manifest like new versions of Christianity. I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm just giving you the historical, socio-cultural like rundown. And you get all these like weird groups popping up, like the Shakers, and the Shakers is a perfect example. I can't think of anyone else off the bat, but the book basically documents like I think it's like 6 to 10 like different like kind of like indigenous American manifestations of Christianity that came up, and then none of them really stuck around. Honestly, I don't think the Book of Mormon's in there. I mean, not the whole thing, obviously, but like the Shakers and stuff like that. And that is very interesting to me. I mean, part of my interest but the main interest I have in theology is like getting to know God and like figuring it all out and stuff. But I feel like even looking at theologies that I disagree with, it's interesting to like reflect on and be like, well, why do I think this is like incorrect? And how is this a product of like its time? And what views do I have that are like a product of, my time or like the way that I see things and stuff. So kind of a roundabout answer there. I do like watching Mormon debates. I watch a lot of videos where it's like street preacher confronts Mormon and they argue, and I really enjoy that. Only because it's like an interesting way to get to know Scripture better is seeing like, Mormons argue with like other Christians. That's basically it. Kind of a long answer, but yeah. Ever been to Canada? No, I have not, but I would like to do that. Have I heard of Healthy Gamer? He's a psychiatrist and Buddhist monk doing therapy with people on Twitch and introducing tons of people to Buddhism right now. No, I haven't. Should I debate him? No, I haven't heard about him. We can talk about Buddhism in a second. Okay, so I want to rapidly. I got to talking too much, so we theoretically have like 10 minutes left. There are still Shakers, really? I honestly did not know that. I'm not going to lie. I did not know that. I thought they all died out because they didn't like having sex. But that's really interesting. I didn't know that. Okay. Focus. So what I'm going to do right now, it's coming out really dope, so I don't want to like rush it. But I do want to make sure we wrap it up in a timely fashion. In my mind, ideally, I thought they'd be an hour, honestly. But now, obviously, they're not going to be an hour ever. So I'm going to quickly put in the kind of like dome of the sky. And then we're going to rush back down. Not rush. Give it the respectful amount of time. But it is looking pretty sick, honestly. Get the night sky kind of bleeding in here. Yeah! Looks sick. And actually, I kind of want that light blue. Yeah, there we go. Like poking through. Now we're talking. Yeah, someone actually bought the painting from last week and sent me a picture of it in their house. It looked So good. Okay, so I'm going to throw up this like yellow glow down from the bottom. Yeah, whenever I'm like, oh my god, we got to finish, people watching are like, no, we're good. Let's just keep going. I mean, true. No one's probably like in a rush to get anywhere. We're not going to rush. We're not going to rush. But honestly, though, this looks good. So it's kind of interesting, too, because then you get to, not the end, but you get like pretty far in, and it's like, very much so a feeling of like, well, we came this far, so, you know, it's like always how I feel. Oh, this is perfect. I'm going to break back out. This is a perfect example of when the watercolor pencils are perfect. So I want this yellow glow. I'm just going to throw it down with the watercolor pencils. So this is like a really easy way for me to apply pigment. I like using sort of the technical words sometimes, because then if you watch the show a lot, you can get to start using the technical words themselves. I mean, yourself, if you're talking about art with someone, or, you know, want to sound cool in front of a girl, or like a 65-year-old like painting neighbor you have. So this is a really easy way for me to lay down the pigment. So what I'm doing right now is like I'm laying down the stuff that's in the paint that is colored. It's just the pigment, right? And now I'm going to hit it with the water, and it's a really easy way for me to do it. What I was worried about was if I take this yellow over here, right, and I load it up on the brush, it's going to be hard for me to get like the glow coming up from the bottom effect that I want. But if I can lay down the pigment and then just hit it with water, then, you know, we're good to go. And actually what I'm going to do, so I used the warm yellow there. I meant to use the cold yellow, but it'll be cool. And I'm going to add the cold yellow right on top. So maybe you can't see the difference yet, but this is more like a cold, like lemony yellow. The two yellows you're going to get in painting like this is basically lemon yellow. It's actually really called lemon yellow. I'm not just calling it that. And then the other one is like school bus yellow. That's obviously not what that one's really called. That's how you can imagine the difference. One is really cold. That's the lemon yellow. And the other's way more warm. That's the school bus yellow. Yeah. Boom. Hello, Epic Sunrise Department. Yes. Boom. Man, honestly, it's always the random things that come out super dope. Dude, the way the smoke came out in the background is next level right now. It's looking so good. Cool. Yeah, it's funny, speaking of time, like I don't know if anyone's done like public speaking stuff, but like you literally have no conception of time whatsoever. Like if I couldn't see a clock, I wouldn't know if it had been like 3 hours or like 45 minutes. All right, nice. I'm really feeling that glow. It's actually not as like loose as I wanted. I kind of wanted it to like fully bleed up and like just come all the way up, but I think it's fine. I didn't even know it was like, that looks tough. Nice. And that word just like always stuck with me. I was like, yeah, tough. It kind of such a good word for like a visual, like when you want it to look like kind of badass, but you wouldn't always use that word. Honestly, that looks sick. It looks really, really, really tight. I'm gonna put some red in the eye of this ram on Balaam's horn over here, on Balaam's skull. Yeah. Boom. Yes. Yes. On the eye itself, I'm actually just going to throw down this red circle on the eye. And then I'm going to go back in and paint in the pupil and stuff. I could have made it orange, but we have such a good color scheme going on right now with the red, blue, yellow, and then the grays and browns. If anyone's starting to do art or getting into art, I guess I don't know where this phrase came from. Maybe I made it up, but discrete manifestations of the primary colors are always a really good color scheme. This one isn't really discrete at all because I have full blast blue, full blast red, and full blast yellow, but sticking with the primary colors, you're never going to go wrong. It's always going to look good, actually. Let's get a little color coming down from the hills right now. I'm going to grab a way bigger brush, and I'm just going to pull down some color. I'm making sure there's not any color on this brush right now. And I kind of just, looks like there's some pigment on this brush. I don't want to like mess this up at the last minute, so I'm actually just going to use a different brush. Cool. And let's see, I'm just going to kick this up a little bit. Because I just want, it's kind of like what I want is like impossible to get. I just want like the perfect amount of water and pigment on the brush. That's pretty good, actually. So I can just... What I should have done is thrown down the water first, but it's not a big deal. And then since I'm not using a huge brush, I have to just make sure that what I don't do is overwork it. I don't want to make it look like there's all these little like tick, 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 tick motions in there. I just want it to look like big and natural and sounds kind of lame using this word, but like unfussed with. That's like really what I want it to look like. I want it to look very natural and just like it just spilled out. It's like always the look you're going for with watercolors. Yeah, that's good. A little black got out here, so I'm gonna just dab that up, and I'm actually just gonna come back and get a little like white patches. It's gonna make it look a little more natural. Yeah, I'm down with that. Nice. Cool. So yeah, we got it all here. We got the Reformed. Actually, it's interesting because one of the main archetypes I like dealing with is the Reformed occultist. Oh, dude, I didn't even read the thing that I was gonna read. Oh man. Okay, I got something cool. We're gonna read really quick. I'm going to read this thing, and then we're going to wrap up the picture. But it's worth it. It's cool. This is cool. If you stuck around this whole time, it's totally worth it. I see Spoon of Salty has just arrived, so you arrived at the perfect time. I'll read something dope. All right, so check this out. Here, wait. I'll let this kind of dry out. This is looking sick, though. I'm loving the black. I'm loving the black right now. So worth it. All right, so as I was doing research, I remembered something dope, and I pulled it up. And I was going to read it when we started talking about Balaam, but honestly, I just forgot. Okay, that's good enough. We're good. We're very close to wrapping this up. But I'm gonna pull this off screen. That's one of the best ones so far. Okay, check this out. This is such a excellent detour. So this one will be a little longer than normal because I'm gonna read this and we'll wrap it up. So maybe we got like 20 minutes left or something. But it's not a big deal. All right, check this out. Oh, I'm so pleased to share this with you guys right now. So the cover of this book, boom. So this is a book, so stick with me. I know it says occult philosophy. Just stick with me though. There's a reason that I'm plugging this on the stream, on the Christian art stream. I know there's a reason for it. Just stick with me. So 3 books of occult philosophy. It's by this guy, Henry Cornelius Agrippa. So I've carried around this book and read it so much. I don't know if you can't see. Oh, there you go. So the plastic, the wrapper, what do you call this? The like laminate on the cover is like peeling off because I've carried this book around with me so much and I read it so much. So here's the thing. This is a book that was written in like the 1500s or so. I think it was like 1520s. And it's this guy, Henry Cornelius Agrippa of Nettersheim, making a total summation of esoteric, i.e. occult philosophy, magic, stuff like that at his time. The thing is, what's really dope about this book is that it's originally, like, I've seen the actual like manuscripts of it in a museum. They're like this thick. This guy, Donald Tyson, this guy's kind of whack. He is like actually an occultist. Like I said, there's a reason I'm bringing this up. Like, stick with me. He annotated everything in the book. So instead of being this thick, like just like 50 pages, 100 pages, this book, boom, it's insanely long. It's like thousands of pages. The reason that I'm bringing this up right now is that, yeah, occult philosophy, and it's all about like magic and alchemy, and basically what this guy does is he makes a total summation of occult and esoteric stuff in Germany in the 1500s. In the beginning of the 1500s, that's what it is. So I read this book when I was like Western occult boy, obviously. And it's pretty interesting. The cool thing is that even if you read it now in like a skeptical fashion, the fact that it's totally annotated makes it like an actually really good resource. So like, let's say there's a chapter on the 4 elements, and it'll say, here's what Plato says about the 4 elements. Plato says that fire is like this. There'll be a footnote, and then you can check the footnote, and it'll take you to where there's a longer paragraph of like what Plato says about the 4 elements. So it's a really awesome resource in that way. The thing is, honestly, you shouldn't read this stuff unless you kind of have your head on straight theologically. I'm bringing it up for a reason, but just in general, if you're kind of floating and you're like, oh, it's cool, it's black with white letters, like, then don't read it. But here's the thing. This is why it's awesome. So often people that are still, occultists and like into like this kind of thing will be like, oh, dude, Agrippa, like, have you read this book and stuff? And sometimes I can tell they didn't finish it because the whole book, so he goes through the whole book laying out all this stuff. And then the last chunk of it is him turning his view around like 180 basically and being like, yeah, actually, I only wrote all this stuff and read all this stuff because I was really young and being kind of naive. And actually, it's just a combination of like wasting your time or like messing with evil stuff. So, basically I like recant everything I said in this book. and you should just be Christian and, trust in God, and all this stuff is either like bullshit or dangerous. So I kind of wish I didn't write it, but since I did, he tacks on this addendum at the end where he goes back through and is like, yeah, here's why this is whack, here's why this is whack, here's why this is evil. And it's actually pretty awesome, honestly, because you get through the whole book and then you get to the end and you're like, oh, this guy's based, actually. So there's this chapter at the end. It's not really a chapter, it's just a few pages. So I add Agrippa. So I view Agrippa as part of like what I would call like the reformed occultist thing, where people go into the occult and esoterica, and then by doing all this research, they're like, oh yeah, actually demons are real, and I should just be aligned with God, and all this stuff is like bad, basically. So there's this part at the end. Henry Cornelius Agrippa sendeth greeting to a certain friend of the king's court. I don't know who this letter is to or what, and I couldn't figure it out because it's just dropped here in the back, but it's pretty awesome because basically what it is as you may know, there's an so this ties in with Balaam in the painting. This isn't just like totally random that I'm doing it right now. Basically, as you may know, so pretty much any royal court and stuff like that throughout time, there's basically like a 50-50 chance that that they're working with like prophecies and divination, and they have like court sorcerers or court alchemists and stuff like that. I mean, that's true all the way from like Queen Victoria to like probably 10 million BC, right? So he sends this letter to someone in the court. It's addressed kind of like it's written to like some like German royalty or something, or someone like, I guess, royalty in Germany. But basically the whole letter is him being like, yeah, I know you work with like enchanters and prophecy people and stuff like that, but it's all totally bullshit and you should not do that. And like, here's why it's really dangerous. It's pretty awesome. So I'm just going to read it. I'm not going to read this whole thing, obviously. I just like outlined like a few paragraphs, but it opens up really cool, and I'll just jump through. He mentions Balaam in here, and it ties in with Balaam because the king tries to get Balaam to, make a prophecy against Israel, but it all backfires. So it like perfectly ties into like what I'm going for in the picture here. But I will just read a few parts of it because it's really awesome. So he says, the ancients were wont to brand notorious folly with this proverb, to bring owls to Athens. But it is not a great part of less folly, but of most great impiety, to send devils to hell. You know what I call hell, that school of wickedness, with which much displeasure I have elsewhere in its colors notoriously showed the court to be. But there was never so just an occasion of writing and of indignation given as now. If it were lawful to treat of the whole business as I should, yet I cannot contain but give you an argument of it. So he's like basically laying out why they shouldn't be working with like enchanters and prophecy people and stuff like that. So he says in Germany there was sent out a call for people who could like work with spirits and stuff like that. He's talking about a necromancer, and they wanted these people, and he gives all these biblical examples of kings and historical examples of people that it didn't work out for. What do they so much despair of God, that they have judged it requisite to desire the aid of the devils? Is not this according to the word of Jude and Peter, to deny God and Jesus Christ our Lord and Savior, who hath redeemed us, and to bring upon themselves swift destruction? Do they not treasure up for themselves the fierce wrath of the Lord, who will send it upon them by evil spirits? Are they not delivered over to a reprobate sense, who desire the certainty of secret counsels from the devil, the father of lies, and hope for victory elsewhere than from the Lord of hosts? That's a very like Old Testament like prophecy feel, because he's like really pissed off. Mentions Balaam over here. So he goes forth, he's like, Pharaoh called forth magicians, didn't work. Balak the Moabite sent forth Balaam the sorcerer, it didn't work. And he goes through all this stuff, just like laying it out. I'm just going to read a few more paragraphs because I think it's cool. O fools and wicked, who by these arts would establish a kingdom, by which formerly most potent empires have fallen, and have been utterly overthrown, of whom it was truly spoken by Jeremiah, our crown is fallen, woe to us because we have sinned, which I wish might not be so true as fitly applied to you. Behold, it is at hand, and as yet you shall see and feel the great things of God upon the whole earth, and shall tremble because the misery which you know not shall come upon you suddenly. Whither then will ye fly? Stand with your enchanters and with the multitude of your sorceries, if haply they can profit you, or can be made thereby stronger. Will not that German sorcerer that you sent for save you, and make lying prophets, and prevail against the wrath of the Lord, and deliver you from evil? No, ye wicked, no. Unless the Lord shall build and keep the cities and kingdom, all the keepers thereof labor and watch in vain. It is the work of God alone, not of devils, not of magicians, to suspend or change the sentence of the prophets. Hello, Epic Department. Hello, Epic Department. And then he wraps it up like this. Lastly, blessed is the man in all things who fears the Lord, who is unspotted in the way, who goes not into the counsel of the wicked, who takes pity on the poor and needy. For in an evil day the Lord shall deliver him, and shall not deliver him into the hands of his enemies. All the wicked shall see and be vexed, and shall gnash their teeth and pine away. Their desire shall perish. And this is how he wraps it up. Let this suffice for admonition, for I will not more curiously prosecute this matter. Let haply the evilness of the subject should provoke me to write more than is expedient. Farewell. From Paris, February 1528. Yeah! Yeah! So I don't know what this is. I don't know who it's addressed to or anything, but he's basically laying it out for these like royals who are working with like enchanters and stuff. And I just thought it was awesome. Cool little historical note if anyone wants to really dig into it. There's a footnote over here where he talks about this German sorcerer that was sent for, and the guy who edited the book says it might be the historical Faust, because it's around the time that there was this like guy who Faust is probably based on in Germany. I don't know too much about that, but I'm just throwing it out there in case someone else wants to look into it that's not me. But anyway, I thought that was awesome because I was looking up Balaam in that book, and it brought me there, and I was like, yeah, that's the vibe. That's the vibe. Just like wicked royal people working with like these dark sorcerers and stuff. Oh, I got amped reading that right now, just for the record. I got amped reading that. All right. Anyway, let's do this. Now we're back in the game. So it was a really, really nice detour. I think that was really worth it. Yeah, Isidore, alchemy. Yeah, alchemy basically was science. Yeah, there's a time. I mean, I'm not like. I think I'm a pretty reasonable guy when it comes to like all the esoterica stuff. Obviously, it's not like I like see like an alchemy symbol and I'm like, oh my god, this is the worst thing ever. There was a time where like it's married to science and what they call it like natural magic and stuff like that. But I just thought the idea of those like royals like relying on like enchanters and stuff instead of God, and this really angry dude in Germany in the 1520s like laying it out like that was really dope. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm amped up from that. I got amped from that. Why do I drink coffee if I can just read that and get stoked? It also has that very like Old Testament prophet flavor. I think a few weeks ago we were talking about like Zechariah and like the minor Old Testament prophets, and I feel like it has that vibe where some dude is just like pissed and like laying it out for those in power. So what I'm going to do, I wasn't sure how to wrap up the brazen serpent, but since we have these two fallen crowns over here, I think we should get like a gold crown up here at the top. Sort of like God has like blessed like this thing in the picture, but almost nothing else actually. So we're going to put this crown over here. Boom. And yeah, I really want to look into what that letter actually is. I don't know if he actually sent it or if it's based on some like historical thing or if it was, who knows, man. Yeah, someone said in the chat he could have just been like worried about getting like burned for like wrong thing. Yeah, some people do think that, but the thing is he wrote the whole book and published it. And then he didn't really do much else like that for the rest of his life. So you could say that. Don't know. I don't know if it really plays out. Just my opinion, obviously. Okay, so I want to wrap this up. We got this like little space in the middle. Since we're in like wrapping it up mode, and I like the density of the picture right now. I think it's looking like it's the perfect density. This is the only word I can use. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put like a moon and put like a little night sky in there in the middle. I think that would be really dope. The perfect color. Oh shit! I dropped it. Yeah, it's fine. Perfect color is cerulean, but if you've been watching the show, you know that all the cerulean tubes I have around are dried out because there's some manufacturing defect with Winsor and Newton, and I emailed them and they emailed me back. I mentioned this last week and they were like, oh, it's just those tubes. Bullshit. I'm going to buy another one and then I'm going to email them again. Yeah, that's actually really true, Isidore. I don't know if I'm saying your name right, Isidore. But yeah, it's kind of like how scientists are the new court magicians. Yeah, exactly. Hello, woke department. Exactly. All right, so I'm going to just lay down this cerulean. It's not going to be so dark. The thing is, I'm going to put like a moon in here, and I thought it would be kind of cool to not have it be so dark. I would use this cobalt blue, but then these two things are like tied together, so I didn't actually really want that. Cool. Boom. So I'm going to put this moon in here. Moon is kind of a nice symbol of just like, kind of fits him because the moon's not like an evil symbol, but it's associated with like prophecy and strange happenings, and he's this like weird priest, right? So it kind of all goes together. Can I put alcohol in there? Yeah, so the thing is, if I put alcohol or something in the dried tubes, Eventually, if you use paints with alcohol in them, which I have done, eventually, like way down the road, it'll eat away the paper. The paints and everything that I use is acid free, and there's no acid in the paper. So like theoretically, once I wrap this up, if I just hung it on a wall, it wouldn't fade or turn yellow after like 50 years or something. So the alcohol would. I could get water in here. They're water soluble. So you probably asked me that, like thinking like how to like dissolve the paint, but they're actually water soluble. So I could put water in here, but honestly, it never gets back to being how it is if it's just like a nice fresh tube of paint. That's the only reason why I'm like being a baby about it. Okay, and what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna dry up the middle a little bit. Yeah, perfect. That's perfect. I'm gonna put a moon in there, some little white stars. Otherwise, I think we're pretty much like wrapping it up. I feel like I should get something down here at the bottom. I guess I'm going to put the yellow ochre, push it up from the bottom. We'll put in the moon, and then I think we're probably done. I was going to even do something with the eye, but I think it just looks dope as a circle. I'm really just feeling it, honestly. I was going to come back in, and like detail up the outside, but I don't know. I think it's kind of like finishing itself. I feel really good about Yeah, I can do what I'm doing now, where I'm like I can like strategically deploy the tubes that are dead. That's what I would call them. It's like dead tubes basically. But if I wanted to, but if I was doing like, a picture, like let's say off the stream and like really, let's say someone was going to buy it. Like I wanted to make it like perfect. It's really, really difficult it would be really difficult for me to lay down like a nice thick layer of the cerulean paint unless I have it coming out of the tube well. Oh, actually, you know what I was going to do? I was going to put a little line at the bottom, making it like a river down here. Like this is all taking place like on this river. I kind of want to do that. It's a little risky, but I think I'm just going to do it. Do I want to use the cerulean though? Yeah, I kind of do because I'm feeling like I need this color somewhere else so it's not like so random, honestly. Let's see, I just want to make sure I have the right amount. And I'm just going to come along the bottom. Nice. That's awesome. That was great. Damn, I might not even put in the... Yeah, I got to put in a little bit of the yellow ochre though. I actually have to. Even though I don't want to, honestly, I kind of have to, just to get a little bit of like background in, because the whole thing's looking so dope. I kind of just gotta make sure we end on a good note here. So I'm gonna use the raw sienna instead of the yellow ochre. It's basically the same color, but the raw sienna is a little bit punchier. So yeah, there we go. A little bit over here. And I'm just gonna get the water going on. Where's yellow ochre? Right here. Cool. Perfect. Cool. Cool. And I just want it to look like kind of natural, like how I'm laying out the color down here. This is perfect, but I don't want it to be like too tense, so I'm going to lay down like too much contrast. So I'm going to lay down some of these darker areas and then like drag them back out. And I'm really going to try and make it so especially the donkey isn't just like floating on this background. No, I think we're going to be done. I think we're going to be done after that. Cool. So yeah, this looks dope, honestly. I don't want to jinx it, but so far the season 2 paintings have both been very cool. Perfect. Perfect. I really like this water down here at the bottom. It's kind of like a resting place, like a reservoir. Perfect. I'm just going to bump up the color around here. Oh, here's a good question for us. I was just thinking like, yo, did the chat stop working when I read that German book? It's like you say something at a party and everyone stops talking. You're like, oh, whoops, killed the vibe. That's a good question though, man. Spoon of salty. How do I escape the shackles of sexual immorality? I'm gonna assume you're talking about like jerking off and like porn and stuff, right? I mean, that's kind of like the vibe. Actually, it's a really good thing for me to explicate here on the stream because people ask me this all the time on Twitter and I write it out for them every time, but now I'll just link them here. So yeah, there actually are 2 strategies that I would advise if you're trying to like stop watching porn and stuff. It's perfect like last thing for us to talk about. And then I'll dig back into the symbols here and then we'll wrap this up. There's 2 strategies. One of them I actually used to quit all the vices I was trying to quit. I mean, I'm a normal guy. I'm not like a saint or something, but I don't watch porn anymore or, drink too much, or I don't drink at all actually, or smoke or things like that. And a really good way to quit your vices, yeah, this looks so good, is something called not tempting the devil. I think I mentioned it once on the stream, but I'll just mention it again here just so I can link people here and also more importantly so I can answer you. Is basically the idea is that when you're addicted to something, so let's say it's like alcohol, for example, you are like, okay, I drink every day and I want to stop drinking. And you're like, all right, I'm not going to drink anymore. Boom. And basically it's like when you say that, the demons that are like haunting you, doesn't matter if this is like real or not. I'm assuming people that are here believe in demons, but even if you don't, it doesn't really matter because it's like how it works. That this thing that has its like iron grip on you is like, oh yeah, like you're going to stop really when it has its strongest grip on you and you're still like really addicted. And you're confronted all at once with like the prospect of like not drinking like for the rest of your life all at once. You're confronted with like 30 100,000 days of like not drinking, right? And you're like, oh my god, it's way too much, and you're like, I can't do it, I can never do that, and you just give up basically. And that's normally how people trying to quit. Oh, the moon, I'm gonna put the moon in while we're talking. That's normally how people how people trying to quit things goes. You're addicted to something and you're like, well, am I really, you're like deep down, you're like, I'm not strong enough to beat this, like, so I'm just not even going to try. Like, why would I try to like tackle this like hardcore addiction that I have? Or you try and then you fail and then you give up because you're trying to do it all at once. You're trying to take on the whole rest of your life all at once. So basically what the strategy is that instead of doing that, you kind of like trick yourself and you're like, all right, well, drinking is a perfect example. I just won't drink like today, and I can drink tomorrow if I want, but I just won't drink today. It's easy. I can do one day without drinking, and then you don't drink that day. And then you're like, all right, well, I did one day, like the next day you're like, all right, I won't drink today either. And then if I want to drink tomorrow, I can, that's fine. And then you have 2 days down, and then you're like, all right, well, it's the weekend. I mean, maybe I can go the whole weekend without drinking and then I'll drink on Monday. Like that sounds kind of tight, and you basically just keep like delaying it. And in that way, you're like biting off as much as you can chew each instance. So I feel like, for porn and stuff, like honestly, porn might even be harder to quit than drinking. Like, who can really say? But I feel like that's a really good way to tackle like not watching porn, is to not be like, boom, like this is the moment, like I'm never doing this again ever, because then when you fail, you're like, well, I can't do it, like it's not going to happen, and then you get like really discouraged. So I feel like biting off like small amounts and like progressively taking it on is like the way to do it. The odd thing is that I didn't actually really follow my own advice there. I got basically down to like as low as I could, and then it still like had this grip on me, which was really frustrating. I got married, and then I was like, all right, well, now there's like a theological element, like I really can't be doing this shit. But I think the tapering down like that helped a lot. I mean, I got down to the point where I was only watching it like once every few months, and then I just quit all at once. It's kind of like this thing in Zen Buddhism too. In Zen Buddhism, there's this huge debate about whether enlightenment is sudden or gradual. And the thing is, it's meaningless because something is gradual until it's sudden. Before something's sudden, it's gradual. So it's like, should you quit porn gradually or all at once? It's like, well, it's really a spectrum. It's like you taper off, and then there is going to have to be one day where you're like, all right, fuck it, I'm not doing this anymore. The other thing is that you really have to cultivate like the disgust, honestly. You have to cultivate like the hatred and like disgust that you feel for it. Like everyone knows that feeling. Hold on, I just really don't want to fuck this up. Everyone knows that feeling like after you watch porn where you're like, yo, what is wrong with me? Like I was just doing some like sick shit right now. And you really have to like lean into that and like embrace it and like cultivate it and like sit around thinking how much you hate it and like how much you hate that like these like sick people that make this like weird shit have this like control over you, and how much you like don't like that. And you have to like cultivate that literally. And that's kind of like the weapon that you use to like tackle your the biological super stimuli that you're being inundated with. Like if you really think about it, like, literally your primary like physical driver is sex, and you have this like phone in your pocket that you have to have. You can't even get rid of it, and you're like looking at like naked women on it. Like obviously you are, right? Duh. Like how could you not? But when you cultivate that disgust, it like balances it out, and that hatred. And so like, yeah, you really have to like cultivate that a lot. Like I spent a lot of time doing that. I spent a lot of time like thinking about how sick it was that these like people had put these like, I mean, I'm being really real with you guys right now. I hope that's cool. Like, these people have put these sick like fantasies in my head, and like, what the fuck? And like, you're like, you're out, like maybe like you're out somewhere, and then you like see someone or see something, and it makes you like think of porn, and you're like thinking of porn like on the bus or something, and you're like, wow, this is like really fucked up and sick. And like, I let these people like do this to me. Like, what the hell is wrong with me? And yeah, I think if you really cultivate that, it makes it a lot easier to quit, because then eventually what happens is that the disgust and like hatred is like the only thing that can overpower that like primary, like prime, like deep down lizard brain physiological driver. And eventually it starts to tip the scale over, and it's the only thing that's like more powerful than that like deep down biological urge. So that's what I would really advise, honestly. And then you get to a point where you're like holding your phone and you're like, am I going to watch porn right now? And then there's a time where the hatred and disgust like overpowers, and you're like, well, I'm not going to do it. I can't. You know what I mean? It's like if it's like if you ate a cake and like you're going to throw up immediately afterwards. Like eventually you'd be like, yeah, I'm not going to eat the cake anymore. And you have to like induce that like in yourself, basically. So those would be my 2 pieces of advice, honestly, man. Those would be my 2 pieces of advice. You can definitely do it. The other thing is that for people quitting porn is that like eventually the effect of it wears off. Like after not watching porn for a while, like now, like how I am right now, the idea of watching it is like completely and totally ridiculous. And like the idea of it being like tempting is like also like totally ridiculous. And like there's a time, I mean, it's kind of like drinking or smoking. Like if you quit those things, like there's a gap where like you've quit it, but like you still really want it, and like it still has an effect on you, but eventually it's like this demon grip that like lets go, and then it has like no power over you. Like right now, like I'm never tempted to watch porn. Like I'm 100% sure I'll never watch porn for the rest of my life. So yeah, you just have to like power through it, and basically the not tempting the devil thing and cultivating the disgust thing, those are the 2 things that like I would advise for sure. I mean, dude, you guys go on porn sites. I mean, everyone here has probably been on one. Like, dude, there's like literally the sickest shit in the entire world on those websites. And like you suppress it because you're like, oh, I just want to like watch this thing I want to watch. But like if you stop suppressing it, I mean, your natural like spirit will like kick in and be like, wow, it's like fucking sick that I do this, and like just lean into it, basically. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, Peter M. said, Sainted Orthodox monk once said, if we cannot cease our vices entirely, we can at least despise them, or something to that effect. Always stuck with me. Yeah, man. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. All right, Word. That was a really good question, man. I'm really glad you asked me that, so I can kind of like just put that out there for a minute, and hopefully it helps you, honestly. Whenever people ask me that, I always feel like I put on like this helmet, and I'm like, yo, are you ready? Because we're gonna do it. Like I really just want people to like, I really want other guys to like get rid of that shit, dude, so badly. Like you definitely can. You definitely can. And it feels really good. Like, yeah, this is the other thing I tell people, that comic I made. I'm assuming you're asking me because that comic I made. There's a reason that I like illustrated it with me like brutally killing that like witch character, like with all the blood and stuff, because like that's how it feels. Like it really feels like that. Like when I think about it now and when I finally quit it, like just the way I drew it, where I'm like crazed with like with like the demon teeth and like the flames and everything, like that's how it feels. You have to like tap into that part of yourself. And now I feel that like when other guys talk to me, like when people are like people DM me, someone DM me today. I told them exactly what I'm telling you right now. And like while I was writing it, I had that feeling in my head, like what you hear in my voice right now, where I'm like, yeah, do it. I'm like, you can do it. Like we're gonna do it. We're gonna fucking get rid of this shit. Like hell yeah, dude. Sorry, I'm cursing a lot, but whatever. I want you to feel how amped I am. So you can definitely do it, man. You can definitely do it. Word? Yeah, you can do it, man, for sure. And once you do it, like I said, it feels really good. Out of all the vices I quit, porn is probably like the one that feels the most good to like quit. And it's the one I have the most like animosity towards afterwards, for sure. So you can do it, man, for sure. Let me know how it goes. For real, you can hit me up on Twitter if you want. Anyway, boom. Oh, you feel the energy? I don't know if you guys feel the energy, but I'm like amped after talking about that. Reading that German thing and like, talking about fucking killing porn demons and shit. Hell yeah. Getting them super physical demons off our backs. Hell yeah, dude. All right. That was really awesome. That was a really good episode. Let's talk about the picture really quick. Yeah, man, I'm really pleased with how this came out. Unexpected things. I didn't really anticipate leaning so hard into like the gray-brown color scheme, but I think it turned out really well. I was looking at the other pictures from season 1 and like previous episodes and stuff, and what I really liked about them was the contrast. Like whenever you get the black in there with the colors, I think it looks a lot stronger and it looks a lot more intense. So actually, you know what? While I'm talking, I'm just going to outline the moon. I really just feel like I should outline it. I don't know. I just really feel like I should. So I'm going to. Quickly. I think that's the last thing this needs. I put the moon in here because it's kind of like, the moon basically for me is like a symbol of like change and illusory appearances. It's associated with like, I guess you could say like soothsaying. Yeah, this was such a good move. Like soothsaying, and like it's kind of just like an ambiguous symbol of like things not being what they seem. The night, the hidden realms. But also it's not a bad thing because God made the moon, so you know it's tight. Yeah, now we're done. Oh, that was such a good call. All right, cool. Yeah, so I'm really pleased with how this turned out. I like the balance of the picture and everything. The donkey on the bottom with the guy coming out. Unexpectedly, the sky is like honestly the dopest part. Like look at this over here. It's so sick. 2 crowns, river on the bottom. I mean, I think it's perfect. This is perfect. Also, it fits the book of Numbers perfectly. If I had the other painting, I would put them together, but I sent it to that guy already who bought it. Anyway, though, yeah, I'm really pleased by this. It's kind of like, I guess this was unintentionally like an exploration of like the ambiguous occultist vibe of Balaam, like working for this, guy that hates the people of God, but all he can do is like do what God tells him, but he actually ends up being like a bad guy anyway. And it's a really good way for us to wrap up like the symbolism of the book of Numbers, like I was talking about before, because basically like we started out saying, yeah, for me, the whole book of Numbers, since we're going to stop talking about it and not do the next episode about it, is all those double-edged swords. Like, the people of God kind of reject God, so he sends these snakes, but then he doesn't leave them totally hanging and sends the brazen serpent to heal them. God's always like, extending his hand, and then, you can shake it if you want, but if you don't want to, you're probably going to touch the oven and burn your hand. And then he might throw you a rope, or he might open up a giant pit and swallow your tent, which is what happened to the people who rebelled against Moses. So a really good way to wrap up what's easily one of the most underrated books in the Bible for me, Book of Numbers. And I'm really pleased with how it turned out. As for what we're going to do next week, I don't really know. I talked about doing every other week, not every other. The last show of every month being audience tells me symbols and I depict it. People really like that last one. I guess I'll see where that last one fit in the month and do it then. Maybe we'll do it next week. Otherwise, though, I think it's going really well with the planning it out. I think planning it out, honestly, is going way better than just winging it. If you used to watch all the old episodes, I think it's way tighter now. And it pretty organically segues from me talking about specific things I want to hit to talking to you guys in the chat. Still kind of balance it out and stuff. Kind of trying to balance it out and stuff. But yeah, so I think we're good, man. We hit 2 hours and 30 minutes almost exactly. A little long, but we're cool. If you watch this whole thing, thanks for watching this. I really love doing this. Love hanging out with you guys. I love putting the vibe out there in a new way. It's only getting better, so thanks for being a part of that. If you want to hit me up and let me know, I liked it. I guess you could tell me if you didn't like it too, but if you watched the whole thing to the end, you probably enjoyed it to some capacity, right? Anyway, though, that's it, guys. Thanks for coming through. OPHANIM Painting Hour. Thanks for stopping by, hanging out, just watching it. If you're watching it later, thanks for tuning in. And I will catch you guys on the internet, where we all hang out together. I will see you guys later.